Our next great employees could be getting ready to graduate from high school, and now there's a new way to connect with them.
What we have noticed is that we have a lot of kids that are currently in school, in high school, without having plans in front of them. They don't know what they want to do after graduation. So what this program does is it helps to find what their natural interests are, aligns them to an industry, an occupation, a career path, and then comes alongside of them with educational support to be able to obtain that.
The Sioux Falls Development Foundation launched its Career Connections program this fall on a pilot scale with nearly 60 students, 5 employers, and 3 school districts. First Premier Bank was one of them.
For 2 Fridays, we'd have the same group of students that we could talk about our company, talk about our industry, talk about career opportunities. And then those 2 weeks, then we'd have another group of students rotate through, and that was for the first semester. In the second semester, those students got to identify which industry or which company they wanted to pursue. And so then they are full-time on Fridays coming to Premier.
One of those students is Thaddeus Knigge, a senior at New Tech High School who wants to own his own business eventually, but realizes he needs to learn more about business first.
It was amazing, and First Premier kind of stuck out to me in a way that I can blow my knowledge up in entrepreneurship with also understanding the banks aspect of when I come in and I want a loan or something for my business, really truly that way.
He now meets one-on-one with Vice President of Business Banking, Pam Hanneman.
Kind of opens their eyes that, you know, you might be thinking about one thing today, but certainly those career paths can change over time. So I think it's very important for students to see that. Plus, it's great for me. I totally enjoy getting to meet these new young leaders that are going to be our future workforce. We've got some great talented individuals right here in our community. And if we can figure out ways to keep them here, it's just going to be better for all of us.
I met amazing people. Their staff is great. They're fun. They're funny to work with. They're just welcoming and everything, and they're willing to share their knowledge.
High schoolers also got a look inside Grand Prairie Foods, a new employer to many of them.
I don't need hundreds of people, but I could benefit from 2 to 3 very intentional recruitments and developments, and so it's perfect for us.
She begins by asking the students to think about what's important to them in a career: money, job satisfaction, or commitment to community.
So we start kind of high level, and then I ask the very obvious question: how many of you have ever thought of manufacturing or have ever been encouraged by your parents to go into manufacturing? And that's a pretty blunt question because the answer usually is no. And I know that to be the case, and then we challenge them on that. We say, well, why is that? Because you think it's something that isn't as important as another occupation? And then we get into the conversation about what we do. They get to learn from people who work with us.
And it seemingly doesn't take long before students form strong impressions.
This Career Connection program is an amazing program. Every student should really take it and take that opportunity for it. You get to learn it through businesses, and some of the businesses that was part of this program I've never heard of. And it was kind of fun to understand what they do and what they do at a national level, almost a global level.
The people that I've interacted with, they're great students, they're very focused, they're goal-oriented. They've got ideas of their own, which it's fun for me to see.
After you spend an hour with them, you are just, I mean, it's invigorating, and it's a connection with young people. So I would highly encourage all employers to do it, for sure.
Next school year, the Development Foundation hopes to bring many more employers into the Career Connections program. The Development Foundation handles all the logistics, including connecting students with employers. More than 400 students already are signed up to participate next school year, so businesses will find talent looking to learn about them.
We're making a meaningful difference with these kids, coming alongside of them, giving them that opportunity that wouldn't be there but for the fact of this Forward Sioux Falls sponsored program, and that is really powerful.
At Premier, it's about doing what's right for our customers, employees, and communities, giving our time and resources to support what matters most: academics and athletics, arts and entertainment, families and economic development. When you have the right people, financial solutions, and a spirit of service, you build one of the nation's strongest financial organizations. First Premier Bank and Premier Bank Card. investing in you. Member FDIC.
In the 1880s, courageous sisters came to Dakota Territory on a mission. Nothing fazed them when it came to founding our ministry. Today, Avera has that same tradition of determination. We're reaching you in new ways. Virtual health and smartphone visits. Clinics conveniently located in your neighborhoods. No matter what the future holds, our passion for progress will never fade.
The University of Sioux Falls campus got a little more crowded recently as the school played host to the 3rd annual Talent Draft Day, organized by the Sioux Falls Development Foundation.
We had a great day at the University of Sioux Falls with 11 different types of experiences that we offered throughout the day, but really focusing in on what would it be like for those high school students to be on that campus? What would it be like for all of the talented college students throughout really the nation that logged on? What would it be like to work here in Sioux Falls?
The morning focused on middle and high school students from 16 schools. A kickoff from Mayor Paul Tenhagen and a high-energy, immersive start to the day.
We brought about 78 students here today to just explore the different career pathways that are available on USF's campus. I'm looking to be an illustrator when I'm older, and that's why I'm exploring all the visual arts they have to offer here today.
So what did you think about the program?
I thought it was very interactive and very fun. It kept students engaged, and they did a great job explaining things in depth.
They compared it to a college visit on steroids.
It was very much an interactive presentation for learners where they could experience what those classes are look like and get a first-hand account of what it's like to sit in the classroom here at USF, and that's a very unique and special experience. Sometimes I think learners think that maybe a 4-year institution or a 2-year institution isn't for me, but this opens the doors to pathways that maybe kids didn't think they would want to try. I think it's helped me decide whether or not I do want to go to college or not, and just gave me an idea of what college I'd kind of like to go to.
I'm just very honored that our campus was able to do this. We consider Sioux Falls obviously to be our home. It's our namesake, and we believe very strongly that we need to positively contribute to the very community that supports our existence, the community and region.
Some high schoolers stayed for the afternoon when they were joined by USF students who took on a speed networking session with area employers.
For college students, it's a little bit different than for high school students. For high school students, it's all about the social skills, the soft skills that they're practicing. For the college students, it's all about making that connection to an employer, getting that internship.
There's a lot of different jobs in Sioux Falls and a lot of different varieties, so getting here to mingle and talk to other people and network just gives me an opportunity to talk with them, see what they're about, and other jobs that they have open and careers that I could potentially be in.
I think what it does is it brings their education to life, because the theoretical constructs that happen in the classroom are necessary for building your knowledge, but finding your skill sets and dispositional attributes that go into the workplace, the best way you can do that is to have good conversations with people in the field. And so that's the real benefit, that experiential learning component for our students.
So we know that the development of employability skills or soft skills are really important, and just being able to have those conversations and open doors with those employers is a big leg up for our kids, and we're really excited to be here.
And what you don't see on campus is the huge participation in Talent Draft Day nationwide. Students representing 252 colleges logged on for a virtual interactive panel discussion.
For them, we followed up on what's it like to get an internship with one of our employers? What's the right way to apply? What's the advice that you have for somebody when they are applying? What's the proper follow-up?
And speaking of follow-up, that's what the Development Foundation will be doing with the nearly 2,800 students reached during Talent Draft Day.
So the goal coming out for colleges, when we have this great of a participation across such a large spectrum of really disciplines that we need to have here, we want to see these kids in internships with our employers this coming summer. And so we've already identified close to 5,000 students that have an interest in working in the Midwest. Our goal is to bring them here and get them tied into an employer. That's our next step.
Nearly 60% of the U.S. population moved this year. Why are so many people packing up their belongings and making a move to a new city or state? Better job opportunities. Over 40 businesses are hiring right now. That's why the Sioux Falls Development Foundation created Work Sioux Falls, a local resource that gives job seekers an inside track to jobs that are open right now. See the difference a local company can make. Visit siouxfalls.com/work.
The #1 city for best small places for business and careers according to Forbes magazine, Sioux Falls.
Work Sioux Falls.
ZipRecruiter's #3 hottest job market, Sioux Falls.
Work Sioux Falls.
Over 40 businesses are hiring right now.
Work Sioux Falls.
That's why the Sioux Falls Development Foundation created Work Sioux Falls, a local resource that gives job seekers an inside track to jobs that are open right now.
Work Sioux Falls.
See the difference a local company can make in your career. Visit siouxfalls.com/work.
Delay there. Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for coming to this session. We're just peeking out the hallway to see if one more panelist is going to join us. All right. So you'll have to bear with us since we have one member missing today. We will have to navigate through these slides. So, all right, so Tsunami or Utopia? And I'm not sure if Denise was going to join at all today. Okay, all right. I do know that there's been some challenges this event, just with some events that have happened in folks' lives, so I think Denise has been kind of all over the place. So we'll go around and do introductions. Or should we go into the Tsunami or Utopia, the next slide? Why don't we go to that one? One more. There we go. All right, so I work at Omnitech and I do recruitment, and you know, as we all know, one of the biggest things is retaining and trying to attract, you know, top talent. And I work for a software engineering company. We talk a lot about AI, which maybe not everyone knows what that is, and that's artificial intelligence. And we, of course, as a technology company, know that this is down the path for us just for our clients, but it will also be our path as we do recruitment and try and attract software engineers. So the gentleman here today will dig into this topic even deeper, but I'll let you just go ahead and read that slide there. So 3 takeaways for attendees: to understand the importance of AI technologies and how significant their dominance will be in 2013. What are the essential cognitive, financial, and digital skills necessary to replace existing workers? What is the most common employer/government incentives for new hires with these skills? All right, next slide. So that is the team. Unfortunately, like I said, we're missing one Mike. So next slide. He's unable to join us here today. We'll move on to John. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Quick mic check. Yep. Okay. Good afternoon. I'm John Higgins. I'm the leader of talent acquisition at Sanford Health, and so I'll be sharing a little bit today with you about how AI is influencing the workplace at Sanford and some of the things we see coming down the pike.
Ryan, there we go. All right, AI driving better healthcare outcomes, and I'm not.
Yep. I'll jump in, and I'll stand just because it's probably easier for me. So real quickly, we've been using AI in a number of different ways in our workplace. The list I've got on the screen is really meant to be illustrative, not all inclusive, but we've been using AI to assist with pandemic forecasting, certainly really relevant in today's day with COVID-19. We do a lot with AI as it relates to the way we deliver drugs to our patients in a very unique way through Imaginetics, and I'll share a little bit about that. And then probably more germane to the work that I do is how we use artificial intelligence in workforce planning, and also what we're going to be doing with artificial intelligence in the way that we improve the hiring experience as a whole. So we'll go ahead and go on to the next slide if we can. So real quickly, from a pandemic perspective, next slide, these graphs probably look really familiar, right? So earlier, these past couple of years, we've heard from Mayor Tenhaken, our public health officials, talking about what's going on in our community in relationship to infections, in relationship to hospitalizations, in relationships to deaths, unfortunately, that are taking place. And a lot of these forecasts we've been helping to inform via our data analytics team. But more importantly, we've, at the same time that we're informing the city and our community partners on the insights we're gathering, we've built some really neat infrastructure internally around the pandemic component as well. And in particular, our data analytics team has developed some tools that really allows us to look ahead, right, and understand where are the infection rates going. And what that allows us to do is shift resources around, right? It's allowing us to shift talent. It's allowing us to shift beds. It's allowing us to make sure that we've got the right people in the right place, able to care for our communities in unique ways. Ultimately adjusting things like our staffing models within our hospitals and our clinics, adjusting things like our elective procedures that we're doing to make sure that we've got the right personnel to treat the patients that are coming in for these severe infections and whatnot. Ultimately, the models really have ensured that our communities, our patients, and more importantly, our employees have the support they need to be successful and overcome the conditions they're currently faced with. Go on to the next slide in terms of an additional kind of insight. As I noted earlier, another key area from an AI perspective that I think is pretty unique and germane to what Sanford is doing is the work around Imaginetics. So Imaginetics is leveraging some really neat technology from a DNA perspective that essentially gathers insights about patients and helps deliver that information back in a way that makes sure that we're selecting the best drugs possible for the patient and delivering them in the right doses at the right time. They're using something that is referred to as pharmacogenomic testing, or PGX testing, that is looking at key areas of your DNA strand and how that responds to key medications. Ultimately, what that allows is your physician to very quickly be able to pinpoint which drugs are going to be most effective at treating certain conditions you may face. It's really applicable in the oncology space, but also applicable in space that, things like heart disease. And in fact, have a quick video to illustrate
I saw my cardiologist, and I subsequently had 2 stents placed. I had one artery 80% blocked and another 100%. And my follow-up visit to Dr. Larson resulted in him suggesting that I have this test to see if the prescribed blood, which was Plavix at the time, was going to be a good fit for my blood thinner, which was part of the regimen right after my stents. And I was told after I did the test that I had to switch medication because the genetic testing indicated that I would not metabolize that correctly. It's a life changer that you could have medication that's not doing what it was intended. And issues of the heart especially scare, I know me, and
I've been on that blood thinner and it wasn't doing its job. I don't know what the result would have been, but I'm not willing to take those chances if I can avoid it. I had no concerns once it was explained. It simply was a blood test. The hard work is done in the lab with the genetic folks. It's nothing to be scared of. This isn't available everywhere. I feel very fortunate that I was here at Sanford. You know, if I was in a different city, the outcome could have been different.
AI perspective and how we're using things really are clearly impacting people's
Sanford
lives.
Fargo recently celebrated the grand opening of the region's only standalone orthopedics and sports medicine facility. The ribbon-cutting ceremony was the culmination of a 5-year, nearly...
Sorry about that. So as I was noting, the initial two kind of areas where AI is influencing things, clearly impacting people's lives, making sure that we're either getting people, getting beds, getting care to the right areas, or in this case, making sure the right drugs are getting delivered. I'll dive into a couple areas where they're a little closer to my heart, being that I'm in recruiting, and a little closer to the HR space that I play in. So real quickly, we're using artificial intelligence in the workforce planning area. And so more specifically, on a regular basis, our HR team is meeting with our operations teams, running our hospitals, running our clinics, and preparing workforce plans. And we've done that for years, and we look at things like hiring trends, we look at turnover trends, we look at what's going on from a census perspective in different seasons, and when are we seeing, when does flu season come, and what is that going to mean from a staffing perspective? When do we need to be up, when do we need to be down, so on and so forth. What's really cool that's been developed, again by our data analytics team, is that we've been able to create some models that take work units from each of the departments that we support and then model those hundreds and hundreds of times over, comparing them with environmental variables, comparing them with resource variables, and better predicting what those forecasts need to be. And now instead of being, within a 10% swing, our workforce forecasts are within low single digit kind of variances, which really allows us to be much more precise about making sure that we have the right people, in the right facilities at the right time, again, caring for our patients. So another kind of key area, and one of the things I would also just kind of make note of is one of the nice parts about this prediction or predictive analytics that they're giving us is the fact is talent isn't always available to hire when you want to hire it, right? So one of the key areas that we need to focus on is a lot of the folks that we're hiring come out of the higher educational institutions in the area. So when we're looking for those next generation of clinical professionals that we need to bring into our organization, we're paying very close attention to those graduation rates. The predictive models allow us to say, okay, we know we're going to have this need. Your graduation dates aren't going to match up exactly right, but the need's coming. Go ahead and hire ahead of the need, right? So we can predictively get in front of the hiring versus waiting until it's a crisis and you don't have the people you need to staff your institution. Okay, next item, kind of my final item that I'm probably personally most excited about is a tool that we're looking to implement in early 22. And this is really a virtual recruiting capability that will allow candidates, prospective candidates who might want to work at Sanford to interact with us on a 24/7 by 365 basis with a true artificial intelligence virtual online application process, which candidly is proven to be very, very difficult for entry-level talent and candidly frustrating for those that are even experienced talents. This particular technology will allow you to do it via instant messenger. You can complete your application entirely via instant messenger, and more importantly, simply through SMS text, right? So no more do you need a web browser to apply for a job, an opportunity to interact with what what you would believe is a recruiter talking to you, but it's actually, if you will, an artificial intelligence type robot that's talking back and forth with you in a very simplistic and easy way, all the way through the point of scheduling interviews. But let's go ahead and see how this technology works. Playing that. So as you can see, right, game-changing type of technology that, you know, where speed wins, right? In the recruiting process, especially with the shortage that we have in talent pools today, you know, the ability to get from you know, a quick conversation that starts on a text message to having somebody be scheduled and in theory be hired the same day is no longer, you know, kind of a future opportunity. It's available today. And one of the things that's really important about this is for an organization like Sanford that has to be really concerned about compliance and all those types of things, all of this information will work very transparently with our HR systems and will actually, as they went through all of those questions, will ultimately complete that application on behalf of the candidate and then provide them, you know, obviously their user credentials and all those types of things on the back end, so when it comes time to do onboarding, all those things, they're set up accordingly. But we're expecting to be able to shave significant time out of our recruiting process and hopefully win more than our fair share of talent as we bring people through that process. So just in closing, yeah, obviously artificial intelligence is kind of all over the place at Sanford. We've got a lot of different things going on from, you know, obviously pandemic planning to, you know, what we're doing from a drug delivery perspective to workforce planning, and obviously now in the hiring process. Again, this is just scratch the surface stuff. This is kind of tip of the iceberg. We've got artificial intelligence obviously influencing all other kinds of areas of the business. The concept here was to give you kind of some use cases of where it's being deployed, how it's being deployed. You know, in terms of, you know, whether, you know, this artificial intelligence capability is, you know, a utopia or a tsunami, right? I'm not sure that I've got a strong opinion there. What I can tell you is that it's significantly having a strong impact on our employees, on our patients, and on our community. So I'll turn the mic over and we can go on to the next presenter, and I'll be part of the panel questions on the back end for any questions you might have.
Hello, I'm Mike. Good to see all of you this afternoon. As was mentioned, my name is Matt Paulson. I am the founder and CEO of a company called Market We are a financial media business that gives people information about their stock portfolio. We publish a daily newsletter to about 2.5 million people. And it's become a really nice local business over the last 15 years that I've been building it. So when I started my business in 2006, I was a sophomore at Dakota State University. customer kind of gives the suggested response, and then all our support person has to do is click one button, and then it will reset their password and then email them their new password. Or if they're trying to unsubscribe, like, I don't want to get the newsletter anymore, please unsubscribe me. Our support software will say, it looks like this person is trying to unsubscribe. Do you want to unsubscribe them? And then they click yes. So instead of going into their account, pressing, deleting their subscription, and then, sending them a reply and saying, hey, whoever, just want to let you know I've canceled your account, you're good to go. We've been able to eliminate a lot of those steps just by trying to use technology to understand what they're trying to accomplish, and then making it really easy for our support staff to do that. Third thing that we've used AI for is just securities analysis. We publish a ton of information about stocks over the last couple of years. We've really been trying to say, okay, is there anything interesting in here that maybe the rest of the market has missed? And obviously, it's a very rare day when you come up with something that all the quant traders on Wall Street haven't figured out yet. But MarketBeat actually does have some proprietary data that other people don't have. Like when somebody follows a stock on MarketBeat on their portfolio, we track those trends. So if we can say, oh, why are all these people adding GameStop to their list this week? What's going on here? We can do some fun stuff with that. We've tried to put some of that stuff into a model that we call momentum alerts. So typically what happens with stock trends, like there's the Donald Trump social media SPAC that was really hot this week. We try to catch those trends early based off activity on our website. So when we scan Reddit for all of the stock posts that they have, and like, okay, well, if we see like, okay, people are mentioning the stock on Reddit, they're adding it to their MarketBeat watch list, they're visiting that page on MarketBeat for that stock, we're getting emails in about it, and we try to come up with like almost like a momentum score of like how much interest is there in stock right now, and we can typically kind of catch it earlier on the upswing, and say, hey, there's a lot of momentum behind the stock now. Maybe you could consider trading it and buying it, and then doing a 10% trailing stop loss on it. So, say you see a stock in the upswing, and then you catch most of the upswing, and then when it goes down 10%, like when the swing's over, then you kind of get out and say, I'm done with my position. So. That's something we've been working on a lot, and it's really interesting to kind of see all that data work together and identify trends kind of before they get very broad. Obviously, like trading with that data is a much more complicated game, and we've had some people do it with mixed results, like anything. But it's been very fun to experiment with that. Fourth of five things, portfolio analysis. So people will type their stock portfolios into MarketBeat. People that our subscribers tend to have 20 to 30 companies in a portfolio. And one thing we try to do is look at, okay, here are all of the companies that you have. Here's what characteristics they have. Based off what other people are doing, here are some stocks for you to consider. So, if we can tell what sectors people are interested in, what size of companies, just different characteristics about them, and suggest stock ideas based off, what the companies they have now. So that's been really fun to build that out. And then finally, advertising. MarketBeat is very much an advertising-driven business. We do have a subscription model, but that's only about 20% of our revenue. 80% of our revenue is to get people to click on advertisements on our website and in our newsletter and in emails that we send out. That's really where the money is with MarketBeat. So the question is, like, what ad do you show to what person at what time? And we have some really interesting first-party data that we can use to kind of figure that out. Based off the types of stocks that people follow on MarketBeat, we'll show them different advertisements. So if somebody is really into dividend stocks, we see, oh, Matt just used the dividend calculator on our website. He follows Realty Income Corp, which is kind of a known dividend stock. He really wants to, we should probably show him an ad about a dividend investing newsletter. So we've been able to do some of that stuff, and that really increases your, just what we call the RPM, or revenue per 1,000 impressions, by really targeting our advertising better than we could otherwise. And our industry is a little bit weird because it's the financial publishing industry. It's very kind of old school. There's not as much of the programmatic advertising with Google and places, some of their competitors like AdX. It's really much, you still get an email from somebody saying, hey, we want to run an advertisement on your website. Here's what we're willing to pay. So we've kind of had to take the time to build out our own ad server and then we can place those ads in all these different placements. So like the website's a placement, SMS, text messages is a placement. We could text somebody an ad. We can email it to them. We can put it in their newsletter. We can send them a push notification on their web browser. And obviously, you don't want to get annoying about it, but we kind of know like who we should target with ads when. And one thing that we figured out recently is if somebody clicks on an ad anywhere and then you send them an email right after that, you can make a lot of extra money because people that have clicked on ads recently are very likely to click on another ad. So we've done what's called triggered email. So if you click on an ad in an email, we'll send you another ad in an email right away, and we're making like an extra $3 grand a day from doing that. So that's been pretty cool. So more broadly, that's kind of what we're doing, but I really think the delete, automate, delegate is kind of the name of the game. Like, what are we doing now that we don't have to keep doing? What can we just stop doing altogether? Restaurants are really cutting back on their level of service kind of across the board. Hotels are too. And they're getting away with it. Like, people, seem to be okay, at least for now, of not getting the same level of service that they used to. So just the stopping to do stuff is kind of the big trend. Automation is the second big trend. You've seen it forever at McDonald's. They're always trying to optimize like their processes and the movement of people and how the food gets made. And eventually there's going to be just a fully automated restaurant. There is a company that's called Cafe X that not a lot of people have heard of, but they have a completely automated coffee shop. It's in like the San Francisco airport. But they have like a real espresso machine, and then they've got this robotic arm that makes coffee. So you like go to the machine, go to the thing with the app, then you can watch the robotic arm make your coffee, and then it'll like hand it to you like a barista would. There are going to be more and more companies like this in the future. And then the last thing, outsourcing is going to continue to be a trend. Labor source, labor costs in the U.S. are high, and they're going to get higher. So is there a way for somebody else to do work for us that's more of a contract basis, outsource basis? Can we just pay somebody to do something where I don't have to hire somebody to do it? So delete, automate, delegate is really how I'm thinking of. And really with this, I've heard a lot of people kind of complain about it. The cost of labor is too high, not getting good candidates, all the people that apply aren't very good, and it's easy to complain about it, but that's just not the solution. Like, it's really, how can I get ahead of this? You can complain about paying $15, or you can get ahead of it, start, paying $16 an hour now, or 17 or whatever. And yeah, you're gonna have to raise your prices, but everyone else is gonna have to too. So you might as well get ahead of the game on it. The other thing that I've kind of been thinking about, the Paradox app that you mentioned is really interesting. There are a lot of people today that want to do gig economy work. They want flexibility in their schedule. They don't want to be tied down. They want the freedom to kind of work where and kind of when they want. So I think we're going to see a trend of where we kind of try to fill traditional work roles with gig economy labor. So I always think of like, the coffee shop I go to, Queen City Bakery, go there every day. They run that place with 7 people. But if you're trying to fill a barista spot, and it's hard to do that right now, if you're Starbucks or whoever, what if, like, say you want to work at Starbucks, and you go and you get the Starbucks training so you know how to make coffee, but then after that, like, there's a big pool of people that could work at Starbucks, and then from that you kind of use a gig economy-based app to bid on different shifts at different stores. Like, I think there is kind of a mispricing of labor in work right now, where there are a lot of employers who really don't know what the true cost of the employee is. And if there was some transparency and kind of more market-based pricing on some of this bidding, or on some of the labor, like, what if, the cool shift of work is like 8 to 2 or whatever, but a lot of people want to do that, so maybe that pay is lower. People don't want to work on weekends. Maybe people bidding on hours, that gets bid higher, or evenings get bid higher. So if there was a way that we could have a pool of labor and kind of commodity-based work, or commoditized work, where it's kind of easy to do, or a lot of people could learn how to do it, and then you bid on different shifts, I think that'd be a really interesting solution to the kind of flexibility and wage problem that we're seeing in a lot of businesses. companies are going to have to figure out how to give their workers more flexibility than they have today. It's just the nature of things. And even if you are in a position where you think that you can't do it in your line of work, you're just going to have to figure out how to do it. So anything you do to get ahead of that game and try to create incentives or really market-based incentives where people that are working for you determine like what the wage is like. And I know that's hard to do, obviously, but I think that's going to be a real trend that we see in the next couple of years. So that's kind of what I had for content, and I don't know what else we're doing, but happy to chat and have talk about questions too.
Do I just skip forward on those two slides? Okay. Denise added a slide here on Gen Z, and I'm not sure if that was on yours. Okay. Well, I'll just add to this from my perspective. The students that I reach out and talk to that are computer science students, this last year, of course, remote work is one of the things that a lot of engineers would like to do. They've noted that they want to travel and then work remotely. But I also hear a lot of times when I say, what do you do for fun? A lot of them will tell me, I created this app, or I did this, application. So I hear that, Gen Z entrepreneurial, creating things, kind of thinking about that future, and maybe, as Chad Greenway talked about that app that for the sports thing, there's a lot of that out there, and that's pretty cool. All right. Well, I think we're going to open it up to questions here. I guess one question I have for the group, and just raise your hand, are any of you talking about AI in your environments? Well, as I shared in our space, that's definitely a piece that's going to grow in our business. As these two gentlemen talked about data, of course, that, how many years ago we knew that was on the forefront. So we have folks that have gone back and gotten their, masters in data. So I was down at USD the other day, and they have a whole program on AI. So the students are going to have lots of opportunity to grow in that space. And yesterday I was here at an IT event, and AI was brought up yesterday. 3-4 years ago, there was a guest speaker, and she was talking about AI. And hers was a little sci-fi, and I'll be honest, it was a little like, oh boy, this is going to happen, like the Jetsons, for those of you that watch that show. But it is amazing, as Sanford has talked about, what that's doing for their employment, but they're also healthcare. It's huge. So it's scary and kind of crazy, but pretty awesome at the same time. Do you want to chime in on anything?
Well, yeah, there's no question that the influence of artificial intelligence, both in the workplace and how you're procuring talent, how you're developing talent, how you're paying attention to who might be ready for their next move. There's a lot of work that's being done around modeling prevention and looking at, when somebody's going to be at risk to leave and how you can get ahead of that, so just from another HR application. But in the healthcare arena, it's constant, right? From robotic assisted surgeries to some other things that we've outlined. Certainly, these technologies, these capabilities are growing, and they're growing at a pretty significant pace.
STEM event for young girls, and we had the Da Vinci robot in, and that was pretty cool for those girls to get behind that robot and, act as a surgeon. It was really fun to see that. So. How about questions? Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, well, to start, right, I'll answer from an HR guy's point of view and from my purview as being part of a healthcare organization. There's no question. A lot of that work is already underway, right? Evidence-based medicine, right? Understanding, what are the treatments that get the best outcomes is already there. And there's a lot of analytics and data mining behind decisioning as to what protocols may your doctor take with you based upon the circumstances that you may be faced with. I think the other element that comes with that, right, some of the unique things that I spoke to from an Imaginetics perspective is they can dial it in even further when they start, if you will, really starting to understand your DNA and how your specific DNA, because everybody reacts to therapies different. Not any one person or any pair of people are going to respond the same way to the same treatment. So the opportunity to really, identify, dialing in that experience, I think is something that we'll see continued pursuit of by lots of organizations. We're lucky to have that kind of capability, right here in Sioux Falls and within the Sanford system. But the fact is, it's elsewhere and it's growing at a really rapid pace. Yeah. Yeah. Well, funny story is actually we'll use it, but use it differently with physician recruiting. It was actually our physician recruiting team that identified the technology as something they wanted to put in, along with the new CRM technology that they were putting in to, as they manage their connections with physicians. Hiring a physician doesn't happen, like that. It happens, over 2, 3, 4, even 5-year periods of time. And as such, they have to kind of move people through an experience. It's very different than a traditional application process, but having this artificial intelligence that kind of recruiting assistant will allow, again, for example, if you're looking for, a neurosurgeon and they just happen to be doing some research on the Sanford website for whatever reason that may be in the middle of the night and, want to get some information about a particular practice that's happening at Sanford or otherwise, this interactive tool has the ability to capture the insight on the fact that the person's on the site, offer up information to them, and also offer up follow-up to them at 2 o'clock in the morning versus, only being able to talk to one of our people, during regular business hours. So we intend very much to roll the capability across multiple platforms. The question will be, and I think it's a great question, is which audiences will want to use it as an application vehicle versus which audiences will want to use it as a information vehicle, and we'll use it both ways. Yeah. Yes. Exactly. Yeah.
Afraid of, whoa, we're not afraid of we're not afraid of hiring anymore. It's, one thing that we don't try to do is like lie to people. So when we have like automated content on our website, like at the bottom of every article, it'll say like, this article is generated by MarketBeat, whatever technology. So that we really differentiate when we spend like 30 grand a month on freelancers right on our website. So you can know when an article is written by Thomas Hughes, contributor to MarketBeat, versus MarketBeat Instant Alerts, which is automated. So we try to make that really clear. And then we try to make it clear when like people are interacting with us as team members, like that we're real people. So like if you get an email from somebody at MarketBeat, you're getting an email from Matt Paulson or Will Bushy, and you can look us up on LinkedIn, and we're real people. I get emails from fake people like all day, every day, and it's pretty obvious when they're fake because you can't find them anywhere on the internet. So we really try to highlight, on our social media and on our website, like, we're a real company run by real people in a real place, and here's a picture of our office, and here's a picture of our team. So that helps a lot, and I think people know when it's when stuff's automated, and it's automated but personalized for them. And I think the key with that is just to really be transparent about what's going on and why, and if people like want the personal interaction, like they can have that, and we make it available to them. But when it's not, like, just be honest about it, and then give them the opportunity for that more personal interaction when they want it. No, I don't think so, because we really lean toward the automation stuff, and it works. I mean, it's just who we are as a business, right? You could, other people have different approaches, and for better or worse, and our thought is if we can automate it, let's automate it. But let's also hear feedback about it, and like if there's something less than ideal with the automation or how we do things, let's take that feedback, let's catalog it, and say, okay, well, we get a lot of like complaints, and like people want like our website to do one very specific thing, but we don't pay too close attention until we hear about something like 20 times. Because when you have 2.5 million people, like there's got to be a bar before you start really paying attention. So we take the feedback, and like if something feels too robotic or too automated, then we maybe change it.
I'll start just from an applicant perspective. The fact is, there's all kinds of tracking all over applications that are coming into a platform. I can tell you probably on 90+% of our candidates where they're coming from, where their application originated, and not because they told me, but because we have tracking codes that tell us where they come from, right? So what's great about that is it helps us understand where should we spend our advertising dollars, where are we getting bang for our buck, and also what are the unique places that we aren't investing in that for whatever reason we're getting applicant flow from, and where might we want to go spend some additional dollars to see if it causes those tides to rise. So now part of that is how we probably set up our advertisements, in that we put tracking codes, tracking pixels on our advertising so we can know where people come from. But I think that's being done all over the place. That's why when you go and you're shopping for a pair of shoes on Zappos or whatever, that pair of shoes follows you around on Facebook, and suddenly it's on your Google account. Every time you turn around, it's chasing you. Likewise, employment ads can actually be done in a very similar format, and we've experimented with some of that with some success. So
really interesting trend going on, just in terms of privacy. And like one thing Apple has kind of determined is like, we're going to be the privacy company. We're going to make it really hard for companies to track you, as we've all seen across the internet. You go look for something on Amazon, it follows you around forever. That's going to change. With iOS 15, they made it harder for Facebook to track, and with any application to track your behavior across the internet. Like if you see on your iPhone, like it'll say, do you want this application to track you, or there's a button that says Ask App Not to Track. And obviously everybody presses the Ask App Not to Track button. So that's made a material negative impact in Facebook's advertising revenue. It's made it much harder for direct consumer brands to advertise on Facebook because they don't have the targeting capabilities they used to. So it is going to make advertising a lot harder. Another thing that's going to happen either next year or the year after is Google Chrome is going to get rid of what's called third-party cookies. So if I want to track somebody on my website, I place what's called a cookie. It's just basically a little file saying, okay, this person is Matt or whoever. You used to, right now you can say, okay, I want to read the cookies that are on Matt's computer, but not from my domain, but from somebody else's domain website. And they're going to make it so you can't do that. So with third-party cookies kind of going away, it's because of the demand for increased privacy. It's going to make it harder to track, but that gives us an advantage because we don't use third-party cookies. We only use first-party data on MarketBeat to track people. So that's not going to get blocked. So we'll be able to do better targeting than a lot of websites. Like say if you're interested in stocks, you could go to a video game website, you might still see an ad about stocks. That's not going to happen as much in the future because of the death of third-party cookies. And you can have information about the people on your website that is part of a data store that you have. That's going to be a real advantage in the near future. Yeah, that was really interesting. One thing Facebook announced today is you'll be able to put on your Oculus headset and go into a virtual conference room with people. It's called Horizon Workroom. So if you have a remote team, you can now be in a conference room together and all work on a virtual whiteboard and see each other's avatars. So I don't think it's going to catch on, but people are trying.
So we have 5 minutes.
I almost feel like small businesses are going to have a little bit of an advantage because, if you're a big direct-to-consumer brand, oftentimes you don't always, you're buying tons of advertising across hundreds of different websites through all these different platforms, and you don't always know who your customer is or why they bought from you or how they heard about you. It's going to get harder for them to do that. But if you're a small business, you're a restaurant or a retail store, you can just ask people how they heard about you. So those one-to-one relationships are going to be the advantage for small businesses. It's like you don't need those tools because you are a small business, and you're not going to be able to compete in Google Ads versus Target for holiday toys. That's probably not going to happen.
But if you're, a toy store downtown, your advantage is those relationships that you have in the community, and by being kind of that anchor person, like, that's going to do a lot for a lot of businesses. Plus, we're talking about ordering now, and just the challenges we're having with shipping and getting barges, across the ocean and into ports. Like, if you have stuff in your store that people can come by today, that's a real advantage. And, at least for this holiday season, that's going to continue to be an advantage.
And just want to add, as Omnitech's a small company, some of those off-the-shelf products that we've used for recruitment, like Zip, the tools that those big companies have put in there has been very helpful for me as I look at the month and how many applicants I've received, where those are coming from. So, but then I also love that I can sit in front of a student at a career fair and ask, how did you hear about us? What made you come to our career booth? So it's nice to have a combination of things to help you.
Yeah, and I'd probably just build on that. There's just a touch, and that when you're working in a very large business setting, there's a lot of hoops, a lot of things to have to jump through as it relates to implementation of softwares, right? A tool like Paradox is quite an expensive tool, right? It's not something that that probably most small businesses are going to go out and procure, right? That being said, when I've got a team, of over 100 recruiting professionals recruiting for talent across the country, a tool like that is candidly a little bit of a drop in the bucket in terms of cost. But there's actually some really great tools out there that are practically free, right? That if my IT security department needed to be involved with going through the process with, we could turn on fast. Things that these virtual assistant type jobs or technologies that are out there that can, people can book time on your calendar. They can schedule calls with you. They can, the virtual interviewing capabilities. Being able to simply be able to have a Facebook conversation with somebody is something that can be done in a small business that probably can't be done inside of most large organizations. And I think being aware of some of those nuanced technologies and apps that are out there that are free or very inexpensive, can really add a lot of productivity to the way in which you can do work today, even in a small business.
Well, I think we are at time. So I thank everyone for joining us today and asking questions, and have a great rest of the afternoon.
Your next great employees could be getting ready to graduate from high school, and now there's a new way to connect with them.
What we have noticed is that we have a lot of kids that are currently in school, in high school, without having plans in front of them. They don't know what they want to do after graduation. So what this program does is it helps to find what their natural interests are, aligns them to an industry, an occupation, a career path, and then comes alongside of them with educational support to be able to obtain that.
The Sioux Falls Development Foundation launched its Career Connections program this fall on a pilot scale with nearly 60 students, 5 employers, and 3 school districts. First Premier Bank was one of them.
For 2 Fridays, we'd have the same group of students that we could talk about our company, talk about our industry, talk about career opportunities. And then those 2 weeks, then we'd have another group of students rotate through, and that was for the first semester. In the second semester, those students got to identify which industry or which company they wanted to pursue. And so then they are full-time on Fridays coming to Premier.
One of those students is Thaddeus Knigge, a senior at New Tech High School who wants to own his own business eventually, but realizes he needs to learn more about business first.
It was amazing, and First Premier kind of stuck out to me in a way that I can blow my knowledge up in entrepreneurship with also understanding the bank's aspect of when I come in and I want a loan or something for my business, really truly that way.
He now meets one-on-one with Vice President of Business Banking Pam Hanneman.
kind of opens their eyes that, you know, you might be thinking about one thing today, but certainly those career paths can change over time. So I think it's very important for students to see that. Plus, it's great for me. I totally enjoy getting to meet these new young leaders that are going to be our future workforce. We've got some great talented individuals right here in our community. And if we can figure out ways to keep them here, it's just going to be better for all of us.
I met amazing people. Their staff is great. They're fun. They're funny to work with. They're just welcoming and everything, and they're willing to share their knowledge.
High schoolers also got a look inside Grand Prairie Foods, a new employer to many of them.
I don't need hundreds of people, but I could benefit from 2 to 3 very intentional recruitments and developments, and so it's perfect for us.
She begins by asking the students to think about what's important to them in a career: money, job satisfaction, or commitment to community.
So we start kind of high level, and then I ask the very obvious question: how many of you have ever thought of manufacturing or have ever been encouraged by your parents to go into manufacturing? And that's a pretty blunt question, because the answer usually is no. And I know that to be the case, and then we challenge them on that. We say, well, why is that? Because you think it's something that isn't as important as another occupation? And then we get into the conversation about what we do. They get to learn from people who work with us.
And it seemingly doesn't take long before students form strong impressions.
This Career Connection program is an amazing program. Every student should really take it and take the opportunity for it. You get to learn it through businesses, and some of the businesses that was part of this program I've never heard of. And it was kind of fun to understand what they do and what they do at a national level, almost a global level.
The people that I've interacted with, they're great students, they're very focused, they're goal-oriented, they've got ideas of their own, which it's fun for me to see.
After you spend an hour with them, you are just, it's invigorating, and it's a connection with young people. So I would highly encourage all employers to do it, for sure.
Next school year, the Development Foundation hopes to bring many more employers into the Career Connections program. The Development Foundation handles all the logistics, including connecting students with employers. More than 400 students already are signed up to participate next school year, so businesses will find talent looking to learn about them.
We're making a meaningful difference with these kids, coming alongside of them, giving them that opportunity that wouldn't be there but for the fact of this Forward Sioux Falls sponsored program, and that is really powerful.
of speech and equal pay. I've got a couple of presenters today that are going to provide some really great and dynamic information on these topics. I am Sandra Wallace. I am the AVP of Human Resources for Premier Bank Card and First Premier Bank, so happy to be with you today. We'll spend some time going through each of their slides, and then at the end we'll have time for Q&A. So let's go ahead and get started.
Can you all hear me okay? Yes, okay. Hello everybody, thanks for joining us this afternoon. My name is Marcella Prokop. I'm the Director of Access and Workforce Opportunity at Southeast Technical College. In this position, I am working to identify barriers to access and entry for underserved students. And then once students are with us, I'm trying to identify those same barriers to their success at college at Southeast Tech. Primarily, I am working with first-generation students, students of different racial backgrounds, different mental health backgrounds, things like that, just trying to be a resource for them. I have spent the last 11 years in higher education, and so I come to this work from teaching, but also journalism, and have worked in for-profit, nonprofit sectors. And so what I see with workplace civility and what I'll be addressing today mostly has to do with the idea of our future workforce and some of the barriers I see with workplace civility having to do with a breakdown in communication. So I'd like to kick off my time with you talking about a quiz. All right, so in the quiz, you can see a few items there. The words are a bones day, pull trig, chuggy, based, the icks, and a pair of eyeballs. How many of you have any idea what any of those phrases might mean? So one person in back raising her hand, Justin, okay. So a few people saying, yes, I have some idea. This is just a small subsection of a quiz given to one of my former Augustana colleagues by his students. They said to him, hey, you're always quizzing us on language. We want to know what you actually know about language. What do you know, you dinosaur? And so they gave him this quiz, and the words mean a bones day is a good day. So there's this pug named Noodle on TikTok, and some days he wakes up with bones, and some days he wakes up and there's no bones. And the days he wakes up with bones, the bones days, are really good days. So this is where this phrase comes from. To pull trig means to vomit. If you are chuggy, you are kind of out of touch. You may be trying too hard. You're not negative necessarily, but you're not as hip and cool as you think you are. Being based or saying something is based is like saying truth. You're just kind of acknowledging something. If somebody gives you the icks, they kind of creep you out. And the eyeball emojis just mean look at this or wow, I can't believe that. Kind of contextual. If you have any questions about emojis and how to speak emoji to the young people in your life, dictionary.com has a credible emoji dictionary along with their regular reference, so I encourage you to go to that if you're interested in learning more.
I'm just going to confess to you, Marcella, the only reason that I knew some of those is because I have teenage children.
See, there we go. We've got somebody who is versed in the language. Well, so this next slide that I have here is a meme, and it says, Mom, Dad, this is the woman I exchange memes with. So long gone are the days of writing letters to each other, going out for a soda, going out to the soda shop for a drink, right? So people are exchanging memes these days. How many of you speak meme? Okay, so you speak meme. The word has been around since the 70s to talk about how ideas are replicated through symbolism and imagery. And now if you speak meme, you know this is a meme. This is how young people communicate today. I think that it is important to understand how the young people around you are communicating. And so I encourage you to learn how they are communicating so that you can have discussions with them. My final slide here, in terms of memes and language, shows these young people saying, my parents at age 29, let's bottle up our feelings and not talk. Yes. And then the next slide, the young man by himself, me at age 29, yes, hello, I would like a therapist. Our younger generations are really interested in talking about mental health. They are really interested in showing up at work as their authentic selves, and they want to be able to be themselves there at work. So, for instance, I was working at the Good Samaritan Society, and I had a colleague who miscarried while we were at work. Losing her baby Ava was really traumatic for her, as you can imagine. And it was even more so traumatic because her previous pregnancy had ended in miscarriage as well. So she had lost both baby Orion and baby Ava through miscarriage. I did not grow up talking about miscarriage in my community. People didn't talk about that. My coworker was really open, and as she shared her trauma, our supervisors were all really willing to talk about these traumas that she was experiencing and to let us walk alongside her and support her in the best ways that we could. She was able to show up authentically as herself in those days, and today she runs a nonprofit that is geared towards helping mothers of miscarriage honor their babies and honor that life. So her passion, this trauma, this issue, became something she was able to talk about at work, and people listened and supported her, and it has led to her pursuing something authentic and meaningful in her own life. So I would say that as I talk about these examples, this example of these students at Augustana giving their instructor this quiz, it tells me a couple of things about our future workforce. Our future workforce wants to be able to show up and talk about things that are important to them, talk about things that are relevant in their world. They want you to be able to communicate with them at their level, and they also want to challenge authority. And so when we think about tips here, my first tip is that you should be able to listen to and communicate with anybody around you at their level. Meet them where they are. When we think about workplace civility and issues that we have where people can't get along, they can't work with each other, they can't talk in a civilized way, there's a breakdown in communication because people aren't understanding how to communicate with one another. Tip number 2, communicate and connect, but make sure you're authentic. So one of the words on my quiz, chuggy, I think I skipped over that one, chuggy is trying too hard. So don't try too hard in your communication. If you don't speak meme, if you would never say pull trig, don't use that word to communicate with others. Be authentic, but work to connect with them in a way that makes sense to them. My third pointer, encourage authentic self and support. So drawing back on that experience I had with my colleague Chelsea, she was able to show up who she was. We were able to support her. We all learned something about that. She learned something about that. The world is a better place, and work was meaningful for this individual as she was going through something difficult because there was support in place. My fourth tip, be the role model they don't have. So one of the things that you might see in discussions where somebody is being uncivil or if the conversation feels a little challenging, maybe those people have not had role models to model proper communication or expectations of the business or the setting or the type of conversation. So if you can be that role model and show them how to adult or show them how to move in a professional circle, you're going to help navigate some of those challenges. And then finally, provide opportunities to create meaning at work. In any of these experiences that I've shared today, the Augustana quiz, the Good Samaritan Society story, there's meaning that came from this. The students at Augie felt heard, they felt like they had a say in their own education, and they got to have some fun in the classroom setting. Chelsea is going out and doing great things in the world to promote the idea of discussing trauma. So with that, I will turn it over to Justin.
Thanks, Marcella. I appreciate your comments. My name is Justin Smith. I'm an attorney at Woods, Fuller, Schultz & Smith in Sioux Falls here. I joined the firm in 2006. My practice has been in the areas of government affairs and lobbying, as well as administrative and regulatory law, and then in commercial and trust and estates litigation. So I've done a little bit of everything over the last 15 years and have enjoyed practicing as an attorney. My practice in the areas of government affairs and lobbying takes me out to peer during our legislative session every year, and I'm able to work with numerous agencies of state government as part of that process. So I'm not originally from South Dakota. I grew up all over the United States and in 2 foreign countries. My father was in the U.S. Army during his career, and I moved to South Dakota, where my wife is from, in 2006, and don't plan to ever leave, and very much enjoy it here. All my children have been born here, and look forward to retiring eventually in South Dakota. I don't know that I'll continue past 65 to spend my winters in Pierre, but it's not a bad place if you want to get some business done in the legislature. So I will tell you that to piggyback a little bit off of what Marcella talked about, one of the jobs of a father, as some of you will know, is to annoy your children from time to time, because that's something important, to embarrass your children. There's no greater way to get children to stop using words like based and sus and others than to start using them frequently in front of them. They hate it, and they say, "Dad, I swear I'll never say it again," as long as you don't ever say it again. So speaking their language doesn't always work, but it can be enjoyable when you learn those new terms. So in the area of workplace civility and freedom of speech, and then ultimately as well in the area of equal pay, I've just been asked to offer some comments from a legal perspective. Having worked with employers and businesses in South Dakota, lobbying for the Sioux Falls Chamber of Commerce, I've had a chance to be involved in some of these issues from a government perspective and from an employer perspective. So workplace civility is an area where I think all of us would hope laws would not be necessary, that people can live by what traditionally has been known as the golden rule, treat others as you want to be treated. Unfortunately, it is not the case that we can always rely on people to act and speak in ways that are respectful of others and that honor the experiences, the backgrounds of everyone that we work with. Workplaces are demonstrably more productive, and morale is higher where civility is made a priority by the employer, by those people who are in the workplace environment. Employers want to incorporate mutual respect into their employee policies, and employees, by the same token, often appreciate guidance from employers on expectations for the environment because it does show that they place a premium on valuing their employees and a good and respectful workplace environment. Some states and local governments have enacted laws on civility. In the state of Tennessee in 2014, they became the first state to pass a Healthy Workplace Act. That law encourages anti-bullying and respectful workplace policies, but again, places more of the onus on employers to adopt those policies proactively. Now, most of the time, though, particularly in states like South Dakota, these issues are left to the free market. Courts generally will not punish directly workplace harassment. The exception, though, is when the conduct implicates a protected characteristic, such as on the basis of sex, race, age, religion, or national origin. Public employers are often subject to heightened legal scrutiny. If you work for a government entity, for a school, often these types of employers are going to be subject to stricter enforcement of these types of issues. Employee policies and codes of conduct are areas where most employers will choose to address these issues. Employers have started to more frequently adopt policies governing interpersonal interactions in the workplace. These policies often take the form of a code of conduct for employees. In this area, though, the touchstone of a good policy is going to be consistency of enforcement. So employers should consult with human resources and legal professionals when drafting, implementing, and enforcing these policies, because one of the main questions if something ever goes to litigation or even an internal grievance procedure is going to be how consistently has this policy been enforced, not just among all employees, but among different groups of employees. Freedom of speech is an issue where lawyers have been litigating for centuries now, not just in American history, but going back even before the founding of the United States. The First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution prohibits Congress from making any law abridging the freedom of speech. South Dakota has a similar protection in our state constitution. These laws were enacted to protect citizens from the government, but what does the First Amendment do in the workplace? If you work for a private, non-government entity, the First Amendment has limited application in your workplace. South Dakota is an employment, quote, at-will state. Absent some illegal motive, an employer is free to terminate an employee at any time and for any reason or for no reason. But as with harassment, these illegal motives are generally those related to some kind of protected characteristic. So if you're firing somebody for race, religion, national origin, etc., those are going to be a problem. And if you use the pretense that, well, they spoke in ways that are inappropriate in our workplace environment, then you better be able to back that up and, again, show some type of consistency of enforcement. So there are narrow instances where employee speech is going to be protected. In general, it's going to be concerted activity by the employees if they're talking inside or outside the workplace, particularly among coworkers about the workplace conditions. There have been claims successfully brought before the National Labor Relations Board on some of these issues. And if you work for a public government employer, free speech is going to be somewhat more protected than it will be for a private employer. So in South Dakota, again, these are issues for freedom of speech, political speech that are going to be governed by employee policies. We want to make sure that as employers, we're fostering and allowing some type of political or social discourse among employees, but you've also got to balance the needs to protect the rights of individuals and protect people from harassment. The case that's up here on the slide was a case involving a student of a public high school who was making comments on Snapchat among her group of friends about the conditions with the administration and the coaching staff at her high school. Some of the same principles that apply to speech off campus will also govern speech by employees outside of the workplace. In the issue of equal pay, this is something where, according to the National Women's Law Center, women in South Dakota typically make 78 cents for every dollar paid to men. The national average is 82 cents. In 1963, Congress enacted the Equal Pay Act, and about 2-3 years later, South Dakota enacted our own equal pay laws here in this state. They've been on the books for about 55 years. Our state law prohibits an employer from discriminating on the basis of sex by paying a lower wage for comparable work, and provides private rights of action to employees to sue for unpaid wages when there is some kind of disparity in the wages based purely on gender. So apart from these federal and state laws, these issues are largely, again, relegated to the free market. And for the most part, there have been employers in South Dakota who have started enacting policies and providing benefits to employees in order to foster the more diverse work environments, because they recognize that these are important issues on which to be proactive. As always, businesses should be careful to consult with HR and legal professionals when drafting those policies. In closing, I'll just say quickly, I appreciate the Sioux Falls Development Foundation, my fellow speakers for allowing me the opportunity to be here today. Happy to answer questions when we get to that portion, and appreciate Sandra and Marcella being here as well.
All right, so at this point, we'll open it up to any questions that you have in the audience. Is there an online portion as well that questions could be coming in? Okay. All right, well, I've got one ready. Are you both ready? I'm going to direct this first one at Marcella. Marcella, you talked a lot about communication in the student population. With this newest generation of workers that is preparing to come into the workforce, what strengths are you seeing that they demonstrate, and how can employers connect with them?
Sure. So I think one of the things that our future workforce really demonstrates is this desire to learn, and they want to learn about the trade or the skill that it is that they're going to be doing at work, but they want to learn about themselves too. They're a highly self-reflective group. They want to know that they're doing the right thing, whether that's ethically or in their professional roles, and they are very open to mentorship. And so I think if you can find a way to mentor somebody, instead of just manage them, so don't tell them what to do and how to do that, but mentor them by proactively sharing your own experiences and sharing relevant and applicable things to the to the tasks that they're doing, tasks and responsibilities that you've had in the past and how you've navigated those things, they're very open to those sorts of things. And I think that's a real strength. You know, for me personally, I want to do a good job in my work, of course, but sometimes taking that critical feedback can be hard, right? I think that's true for any of us, but I see that our students, when they come to us with questions, you know, they really do want to know, how can I get better at this? And how can you give me personal, real-life, tangible examples to help me understand that?
I've got one ready for you, too. I love that you shared the recent Supreme Court case regarding the use of Snapchat. And certainly social media in the workplace and communication in the workplace is something that many employers deal with. What practical advice would you give to employers on these kinds of topics?
That's a very good question, and it reaches into a lot of areas that are going to impact businesses and employers generally. So a lot of employers and HR professionals have started using Facebook and other social media sites to research prospective candidates for jobs, to go and see what kind of, to get an idea of more of the whole person that they would potentially be hiring. Now, this can be something that is perfectly legal, something that is perfectly acceptable, but we've always recommended that employers kind of screen off those people who will have access to that information that is out there in social media from the ultimate decision maker on the job. You know, obviously, if there are things that are red flags that show up on social media accounts and it doesn't look like they would be a good fit for the employer environment, then that's certainly something you want to know and get access to. But at the same time, you want to make sure that you're not making employment decisions based purely on those protected characteristics that I talked a little bit about. You don't want to be making employment decisions, hiring, firing, and others based on national origin or race, ethnicity, etc. From the perspective of employees engaging in the type of speech that I mentioned, complaints about workplace environment, complaints about conditions, wages, leave policies, etc., those kinds of things happen. There have been examples even here in South Dakota of employers or HR professionals who will be out online, or they'll get an email from somebody saying, hey, did you see what John Smith posted on Facebook today? And they'll go look at it, and it seems inflammatory, but then nationally we've seen cases before, for example, the National Labor Relations Board, where an employee has been terminated because of comments they made, and then later the NLRB goes back and looks at it and realizes, okay, yes, they made complaints about the food in the cafeteria or the amount of wages that they get paid for working particular hours, and then 3 employees commented on that post or even just liked that post. Proceed with caution if you're going to be making employment decisions of any kind, up to and including termination, based on what is put on social media. It is a site where, unless they're doing something out, in the workplace, on their work computer, in general, it's something that they've put out there in the public, and you got to make sure that there's not that kind of concerted, protected activity that's going to implicate you in a potential claim against you for making a decision for the wrong reasons. So I would just say, social media is a great way to get to know something about your employees or prospective employees, but again, proceed with caution and make sure you're always involving your HR professionals in those decisions, because they go to conferences and learn these things all the time about how social media can implicate those decisions.
That is really great practical advice. Thank you for sharing that. I know I can benefit from hearing that frequently and often. Any questions from the audience? Okay, great.
Great question. Colorado is definitely one example where they are trying to take a more proactive approach legislatively. We have not seen similar legislation introduced or at least gaining traction here in South Dakota. There have been attempts, for example, here in the state, bills have been introduced to mandate a certain amount of time for maternity leave or certain types of benefits for paternity or maternity leave. Those are bills that we've seen. They have not gone anywhere in here in our state capital. There have been examples of states where they have introduced, I think Washington State last year or the year before introduced a bill that would have increased the penalties for, so in South Dakota, if just like nationally, if you believe that your employer is discriminating for wages on the basis of sex, you can bring a lawsuit and you can recover your unpaid wages under the South Dakota statute. And almost every other state has those. There's about 5 that don't. In Washington, their bill, which did not pass but may well come back, would have increased the amount of damages that you can recover. So it wouldn't have just been the pure unpaid wage differential. You would have gotten treble damages or some multiplier on top of that. So giving more teeth to those types of laws are trends that we have seen, increasing the types of damages you can recover for retaliation. If your employer retaliates against you, passes you over for promotion or even fires you based on the fact that you brought this lawsuit, even in South Dakota you can recover those type of retaliatory damages. I think Colorado and Washington are probably on the cutting edge. I think it will be a while before we would see those types of bills in South Dakota gain major traction. Again, we tend to leave those things to the free market here. But, yep, stay tuned because I think you'll see more of those types of bills coming forward.
Jen? Justin, I've got a follow-up question for you. You had a slide where you talked about the EEOC, and we've seen that the total number of cases, I think on your slide it referenced 980 EEOC claims were received, worth about $130 million. So my question for you is, we're seeing those total number of claims decline, but the dollar amount of those claims continues to increase. Can you speak a little bit to that and how employers might, practical advice for how we might defend ourselves against those types of claims?
Absolutely. So I think, again, one of the main ways in which employers can take a proactive approach to employment law-based complaints, EEOC, discrimination, and otherwise, is to make sure that you have good, strong employee policies that have been vetted and adopted through your HR and legal consultants. I think that EEOC claims in general have been, at least classically for the last 50 years or so, somewhat dependent on the state of the economy. In an economy where like we have right now, where employees could kind of be very choosy and selective in where they go work because of the state of wages, because everybody's desperate for workers, I think you'll see sometimes somewhat of a decline in the frequency of those types of claims. But to your point, you'll see an increase in the amount of dollars that are ultimately recovered. And I think part of the reason why you're also seeing that is because employers, the EEOC and courts are saying, in this day and age, you really should know better. You should have learned over the last 30 to 50 years that this type of conduct doesn't fly. And whether you're violating your policies or not, you should have known that this type of conduct is something in which you should not have been engaging. I think for the most part, where there are those types of recoveries, it is again in areas where there's a lot of precedent, and if the claims make it through the whole process, then it's pretty obvious that there was something that was done wrong. So again, talk to your HR consultants, talk to your lawyers. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
And you made this point earlier, but it's often consistency, right? So having the policy is great, but then applying that policy consistently can help a great deal as well. Marcella, I have a question for you. If we think about the future workforce or the students that you come in contact with regularly, can you describe their style of learning and then how we might adapt that into the workforce to make sure that everyone can be successful?
Sure. I think one of the things that I'm seeing that I continue to see or have been continuing to see over the last 10 years is that students don't really want to be lectured at. They want to have an engaging experience. If we think back to that quiz, that students at Augustana gave my former colleague, they want to be participants in their education. They want hands-on experiences. And so at Southeast Tech, I'm lucky to work for an institution where we are about 80% hands-on and 20% lecture. And I think that works really well for our students. I know that works well for CTE students. I was just in the Gen Z presentation, and somebody from Harrisburg was talking about their students and how they are really thriving in their CTE program with this hands-on experiential work. So I think today's learners really want that. We have to think about the fact that they are digital natives. So young people, I'm on the cusp of Gen Z and millennials, or excuse me, Gen X and millennials. And so although I didn't grow up with a cell phone in my hand, I grew up with a computer. I didn't have internet until I was older. That AOL CD was the first foray into internet that I had. But I still value being able to go to the internet and find information if I need it. I think our future workforce, that's what they do. If they have a question, they're instantly turning to the internet for a subject matter expert, and they're not afraid to find that information on their own. So I think one of the things that employers could be thinking about is, what kind of professional development are you offering to people? And this is people of all ages. I don't care who's working for you. Are you offering them professional development? What does that look like? Is it the same old, professional development person standing up there telling you some information that is maybe relevant but maybe not? Or are the people you're bringing in really dynamic in how they present information? I think it's valuable to have somebody internal doing this work, professional development, whether it's your HR person, whether you're able to get counsel from a lawyer internally who can educate you on things like lawsuits and things of that nature. But then are you also turning out to industry? Are you turning out to the real world and asking some subject matter experts to come in and speak to your employees, again, of any age, to share their real life practical experiences and build that into whatever sort of talk or lecture they're presenting?
I'll piggyback just briefly off what Marcella said. Excellent comments. And just to give a practical real-world example, it doesn't matter what industry you're in, what profession. When I did my first 2 years of law school, I went into my summer clerkship between my second and third year of law school thinking, I really have this all figured out. I'm number whatever in my law school class, and these guys are lucky to have me at this law firm. And when I got there and was actually doing real-world, practical legal work, I found out that I did not know anything. And that training that I received in those 3 months of my internship at the law firm were in some ways more valuable than the full 3 years of law school put together. So for those of you who are businesses and employers and bring in those students to get hands-on experience, I can't thank you enough, because it is invaluable and probably the best education that they're going to get. So thank you for doing that.
Yes.
I think that, so often when I hear this example of, well, they're here at 7 and they have to do this at this time, my first question is always, why? Do they really have to be there? And in some industries, yes, of course, you absolutely do have to be there. If you work in long-term care, you have to be there at a certain time to help get residents up, get them bathed, get them through the restroom, get them fed. Yes, there are absolute needs and certain times. I think one of the most important things that employers can do is pair those stakeholders, pair those decision makers, the people who have the power to actually make some change, with some of the younger people who are trying to drive the change, and give them an opportunity to have that critical conversation of this is what we need and this is why we need it. And then that younger generation can hear from the older generation, well, this is what we need and this is why we need it. And perhaps that means that there has to be some training in crucial conversations. You know, I think that's something that whether it's my generation or whether it's Gen Z, communication styles have changed. If a younger person doesn't look up at you when you're talking to them, for instance, do you think that they're being impertinent? Or can you realize that maybe they're just not used to a lot of face-to-face communication because so much of it is done on a screen and you're looking down? That's a big generalization. But I think anytime you can bring disparate groups together and have them hear from one another in a safe environment, again, maybe with a little bit of coaching as to how that conversation could potentially go, they can both parties can feel heard, and then they can work towards resolution.
I think it's an excellent question. From my experience working for in a very traditional profession, in a very traditional law firm, this has been something where I think the key to our continued growth has been always be learning. Rather than simply making a snap judgment of, okay, well, they must, so-and-so must not have very good work ethic because, I don't ever see them here before 8 a.m. Learn, figure out, engage. And, that person may well have already been working remotely, because technology is such a major thing. As attorneys and other professions, you do not have to always be in the office physically there in person in order to get your work done. They also might be working after 5 on weekends, and there are, as Marcella talked about, the newer generations, the younger generations, have very different timetables, very different ways in which they work, very different just schedules that work for them personally. And I think that's been one of the ways that we have constantly remained engaged and kept people at our firm long term, is trying to remember that there are strengths and there are weaknesses in every generation. And the baby boomers are not really any stronger or weaker than others. It's just that they have different strengths and weaknesses. So I think that's been one of the most important, is just always be learning and engaging and proactive in how you go about recruiting and engaging with the new workforce.
I have to remember there's always a little delay. The one thing that I would say, and I completely agree with Marcella and Justin as well, but consider investing in change management training or principles, because oftentimes there are negotiables and non-negotiables in terms of priorities, and we confuse those all the time because it's a sacred cow, because whatever, and helping people to kind of think about, is it really a non-negotiable, or is there a reason why we've just always done it that way, might be really helpful in helping them through that change continuum. And I bet if we went around this room, we could all talk about how, man, the pandemic forced probably every employer in here to blast through that change continuum when it comes to doing work differently. And so I think the same principles could be used in what you're describing. Was there another question? Great.
Sure, I think that's a good question, and I'll take sort of a broad approach to answering it. Younger generations, so talking about Gen Z here specifically, Gen Z is the most educated generation in history. We've got research from Pew in 2018 saying that only 50% of 18 to 21-year-olds at that time were working, and that's compared to 73% of the same age range a decade before. And they track this back to education. So Gen Z, this demographic of these 18 to 21-year-olds at that time, they were going to school. And so I think that this generation has been brought up doing a lot of research. And because they're digital natives, they're doing that research on the phone, texting, doing research on the internet, doing it on their computer on the internet. But then they're also talking to their peers. And so I think word of mouth, coming from an education perspective, there's something called ratemyprofessor.com. And students go on that, and they will leave all sorts of scathing reviews about instructors. And other students can go to ratemyprofessor.com, and they can see what other people have said about that professor. There are chili peppers. So if you are a female, you can get chili peppers because you're hot or not. You can get them if you're a male, too, I suppose. But I think that this sort of engagement with how do we leave a breadcrumb trail of what works for us, what we like, what we don't like, it's out there. Now, speaking directly to the idea of Indeed, I don't know if students are going to that before they look at a job, or if they are going to that job because they feel like it aligns with some of their mission and some of their purpose and pays and has the schedule that they want. But in terms of importance on how well a place is reviewed, I definitely think that's important. I just don't know if it's Indeed that students are using to gather that information.
If I could, I'll just build a little bit on that, but maybe pivot in a different direction. So I think online research is probably something that's being done, but for a decent number of companies, I don't know that the kind of micro-level information on workplace conditions and those kinds of things are going to be readily available online. But what we have seen at my firm, and what I know from talking to other companies in different industries, they are seeing a lot more willingness from candidates during interviews to ask the questions that when I interviewed for my job in 2005, I would never have thought when they turned it over to me and said, "Do you have any questions about Woods Fuller?" I wouldn't have asked them, "What's your work-life balance like? What priority do you place on family and on children and on leave and personal time? What's your willingness to allow associates to work from home part of the time versus working in the office physically?" Those kinds of questions, which really reach not necessarily directly to what the core of your business provides to consumers, are more and more being asked by employees or candidates for jobs, because those kinds of culture issues are increasingly important, and there's more of an openness to asking those questions. So, as Sandra said, coming off the heels of the pandemic, one of the things that my firm's done this year is evaluating culture within the organization, and that's important because since I joined in 2006, my firm has doubled the number of attorneys that we have. And so with that kind of growth, you really need to keep your finger on the pulse for those issues, what the expectations are, what the realities are, and where you're going in the future. Because, again, being proactive and always learning is the only way that you're going to survive in a world that's so rapidly changing, not just from technology, but from the thought processes and the level of education for the new generations.
One other thing that I would add to that, this idea of issues of diversity are paramount to them. And so I think that when we're in an environment now, throughout the pandemic, we have seen a lot of social unrest, and we have seen a lot of this captured on video, and it's out there. And so because of that, we have a lot of companies who are coming forward and saying, here's our statement on anti-racism. Here's our statement on how we support nursing mothers, et cetera. Whatever statement a company is issuing, it's out there because we like to do some PR and promote these feel-good things that our companies are doing, right? Well, then I think that young people, any worker, any age, can see that these statements have been made, they've been made publicly, and then what is the follow-through? Is that business really putting their money where their mouth is, or was this just a statement at the time and it hasn't gone anywhere? And so I think that is really something that people are looking at. Whether or not there's a way to review it and share that information, I don't know. But I would say we know that social media is a place where people can discuss I went to this place and they are not at all doing what they said they were going to do to uplift discussions about these social issues. So I would pay attention to how we do that kind of work as well.
Marcella, if I can take that point and connect it back to, building an inclusive workplace or putting priority on, workplace civility and how to make sure that all members of the workplace feel included or it's inclusive. Do either of you, I actually will open this up to both of you, have thoughts or suggestions or practical tips on how employers can make sure that they're walking that talk, right? The very point that you just made, it's not enough just to post it on your website, but what are some things that you can do to make sure that you're demonstrating that that's something you're committed to?
I'll tackle that one. So I think really one of the most important things to do is to have a strategy in place, not just shoot from the hip and say, this is the right thing to do, so we're going to do it. Yes, if it is the right thing to do, you definitely should be doing it. But what is the strategy? What do you want to reach? What is your outcome? How can you work backwards from that outcome to put in place the things that need to be there to scaffold you and your employees to get to that outcome, whatever it might be? And so even though sometimes we want to have quick action and jump to a solution and say, here's what we're going to do very quickly, I think being deliberate about the approach and putting together a strategy and pulling in leadership, pulling in mid-level management, pulling the people who are impacted. So for instance, at Southeast Tech, if I were to implement a strategy, and that's one of the things that I am trying to do, I want to make sure that I'm working with leadership. I want to make sure that I'm working with faculty and staff. And then I definitely want to make sure that I'm working with students to understand what they would like to see and what's important to them. Before putting any kind of strategy in place and saying, this is what we're going to do, I need to hear from those who are going to be involved.
All right, well, Justin, did you have anything to add for that point, or it's okay if you don't?
I think Marcella said everything that I was going to say.
She had a great
very well
answer. I think our time is nearing its end. Are there any last remaining questions in the audience? All right, well, please join me in,
I would just say that, to kind of piggyback off of what Marcella and I have been talking about, and I don't want to speak for her necessarily, but the communication, the level of understanding, the engagement, the learning has to be a two-way street. I don't think that we were saying that the older generation should make sure they're always learning about the new generation and adjusting. There will necessarily be some adjustment that will come with them coming to work for your company, coming to work for a specific employer or in a specific industry. There's going to be some level of adjustment of, okay, even if you're with a younger generation and there's a different way of learning, there are some expectations based on the way our business operates, the way our industry operates, the way our policies are drafted. So I think that level of learning and engagement and communication has got to be a two-way street. And if you are a younger boss with older employees, you've got to be willing to understand that they may be very set in their ways and have been raised for 10, 20, 30 years with a specific way of doing things. And so even if, because of the trends, whether technology or otherwise, the workplace and the mechanics are going to change, you need to try and find ways to help the older generation or those who have different experiences to learn the new ways of doing things. So mentorship, I think, is even a two-way street. Young to old, old to young, I think those are both important.
The only thing I would add to that maybe is thinking about, is there a place where you can find common ground? So for instance, my dad is 90. He and I definitely do not speak the same language in many ways, except for the fact that we both speak English. And yet we have common ground. We can talk about fishing, we can talk about nature, we can cook together, make salsa or something. And so if there are really low stakes opportunities for your groups who are struggling to communicate and be civil with each other, if you have some low stakes opportunities to bring them together and develop some relationships slowly over time in not very intense, high stress situations, that might be the way to get your toe in the water to help everybody get along, and then you can broach some of the harder discussions. But then at the end of the day, if they've had their 3 strikes and it's time to let them go, that's a learning experience too. So.
All right, please help me in thanking both of our guests today for today's presentation.
Your next great employees could be getting ready to graduate from high school, and now there's a new way to connect with them.
What we have noticed is that we have a lot of kids that are currently in school, in high school, without having plans in front of them. They don't know what they want to do after graduation. So what this program does is it helps to find what their natural interests are, aligns them to an industry, an occupation, a career path, and then comes alongside of them with educational support to be able to obtain that.
The Sioux Falls Development Foundation launched its Career Connections program this fall on a pilot scale with nearly 60 students, 5 employers, and 3 school districts. First Premier Bank was one of them.
For two Fridays, we'd have the same group of students that we could talk about our company, talk about our industry, talk about career opportunities.
Your next great employees could be getting ready to graduate from high school, And now there's a new way to connect with them.
What we have noticed is that we have a lot of kids that are currently in school, in high school, without having plans in front of them. They don't know what they want to do after graduation. So what this program does is it helps define what their natural interests are, aligns them to an industry, an occupation, a career path, and then comes alongside of them with educational support to be able to obtain that.
The Sioux Falls Development Foundation launched its Career Connections program this fall on a pilot scale with nearly 60 students, 5 employers, and 3 school districts. First Premier Bank was one of them.
For 2 Fridays, we'd have the same group of students that we could talk about our company, talk about our industry, talk about career opportunities. And then those 2 weeks, then we'd have another group of students rotate through, and that was for the first semester. In the second semester, those students got to identify which industry or which company they wanted to pursue. And so then they are full-time on Fridays coming to Premier.
One of those students is Thaddeus Knigge, a senior at New Tech High School who wants to own his own business eventually, but realizes he needs to learn more about business first.
It was amazing, and First Premier kind of stuck out to me in a way that I can blow my knowledge up in entrepreneurship with also understanding the bank aspect of when I come in and I want a loan or something for my business, really truly that way.
He now meets one-on-one with Vice President of Business Banking, Pam Hanneman.
Kind of opens their eyes that, you might be thinking about one thing today, but certainly those career paths can change over time. So I think it's very important for students to see that. Plus, it's great for me. I totally enjoy getting to meet these new young leaders that are going to be our future workforce. We've got some great, talented individuals right here in our community. And if we can figure out ways to keep them here, it's just going to be better for all of us.
I met amazing people. Their staff is great. They're fun. They're funny to work with. They're just welcoming and everything, and they're willing to share their knowledge.
High schoolers also got a look inside Grand Prairie Foods, a new employer to many of them.
I don't need hundreds of people, but I could benefit from 2 to 3 very intentional recruitments and developments, and so it's perfect for us.
She begins by asking the students to think about what's important to them in a career: money, job satisfaction, or commitment to community.
So we start kind of high level, and then I ask the very obvious question: how many of you have ever thought of manufacturing or have ever been encouraged by your parents to go into manufacturing? And that's a pretty blunt question because the answer usually is no. And I know that to be the case, and then we challenge them on that. We say, well, why is that? Because you think it's something that isn't as important as another occupation, and then we get into the conversation about what we do. They get to learn from people who work with us.
And it seemingly doesn't take long before students form strong impressions.
This Career Connection program is an amazing program. Every student should really take it and take that opportunity for it. You get to learn it through businesses, and some of the businesses that was part of this program I've never heard of. And it was kind of fun to understand what they do and what they do at a national level, almost a global level.
The people that I've interacted with, they're great students, they're very focused, they're goal-oriented, they've got ideas of their own, which it's fun for me to see.
After you spend an hour with them, you are just, it's invigorating, and it's a connection with young people. So I would highly encourage all employers to do it, for sure.
Next school year, the Development Foundation hopes to bring many more employers into the Career Connections program. The Development Foundation handles all the logistics, including connecting students with employers. More than 400 students already are signed up to participate next school year, so businesses will find talent looking to learn about them.
We're making a meaningful difference with these kids, coming alongside of them, giving them that opportunity that wouldn't be there but for the fact of this Forward Sioux Falls sponsored program, and that is really powerful.
And now there's a new way to connect with them.
What we have noticed is that we have a lot of kids that are currently in school, in high school, without having plans in front of them. They don't know what they want to do after graduation. So what this program does is it helps define what their natural interests are, aligns them to an industry, an occupation, a career path, and then comes alongside of them with educational support to be able to obtain that.
The Sioux Falls Development Foundation launched its Career Connections program this fall on a pilot scale with nearly 60 students, 5 employers, and 3 school districts. First Premier Bank was one of them.
For 2 Fridays, we'd have the same group of students that we could talk about our company, talk about our industry, talk about career opportunities. And then those 2 weeks, then we'd have another group of students rotate through, and that was for the first semester. In the second semester, those students got to identify which industry or which company they wanted to pursue. And so then they are full-time on Fridays coming to Premier.
One of those students is Thaddeus Knigge, a senior at New Tech High School who wants to own his own business eventually, but realizes he needs to learn more about business first.
It was amazing, and First Premier kind of stuck out to me in a way that I can blow my knowledge up in entrepreneurship with also understanding the bank aspect of when I come in and I want a loan or something for my business, really truly that way.
He now meets one-on-one with Vice President of Business Banking, Pam Hanneman.
Kind of opens their eyes that, you might be thinking about one thing today, but certainly those career paths can change over time. So I think it's very important for students to see that. Plus, it's great for me. I totally enjoy getting to meet these new young leaders that are going to be our future workforce. We've got some great, talented individuals right here in our community. And if we can figure out ways to keep them here, it's just going to be better for all of us.
I met amazing people. Their staff is great. They're fun. They're funny to work with. They're just welcoming and everything, and they're willing to share their knowledge.
High schoolers also got a look inside Grand Prairie Foods, a new employer to many of them.
I don't need hundreds of people, but I could benefit from 2 to 3 very intentional recruitments and developments, and so it's perfect for us.
She begins by asking the students to think about what's important to them in a career: money, job satisfaction, or commitment to community.
So we start kind of high level, and then I ask the very obvious question: how many of you have ever thought of manufacturing or have ever been encouraged by your parents to go into manufacturing? And that's a pretty blunt question because the answer usually is no. And I know that to be the case, and then we challenge them on that. We say, well, why is that? Because you think it's something that isn't as important as another occupation, and then we get into the conversation about what we do. They get to learn from people who work with us.
And it seemingly doesn't take long before students form strong impressions.
This Career Connection program is an amazing program. Every student should really take it and take that opportunity for it. You get to learn it through businesses, and some of the businesses that was part of this program I've never heard of. And it was kind of fun to understand what they do and what they do at a national level, almost a global level.
The people that I've interacted with, they're great students, they're very focused, they're goal-oriented, they've got ideas of their own, which it's fun for me to see.
After you spend an hour with them, you are just, it's invigorating, and it's a connection with young people. So I would highly encourage all employers to do it, for sure.
Next school year, the Development Foundation hopes to bring many more employers into the Career Connections program. The Development Foundation handles all the logistics, including connecting students with employers. More than 400 students already are signed up to participate next school year, so businesses will find talent looking to learn about them.
We're making a meaningful difference with these kids, coming alongside of them, giving them that opportunity that wouldn't be there but for the fact of this Forward Sioux Falls sponsored program, and that is really powerful.
for our customers, employees, and communities, giving our time and resources to support what matters most: academics and athletics, arts and entertainment, families and economic development. When you have the right people, financial solutions, and a spirit of service, you build one of the nation's strongest financial organizations. First Premier Bank and Premier Bank Card. Investing in you. Member FDIC.
In the 1880s, courageous sisters came to Dakota Territory on a mission. Nothing fazed them when it came to founding our ministry. Today, Avera has that same tradition of determination. We're reaching you in new ways: virtual health and smartphone visits, clinics conveniently located in your neighborhoods. No matter what the future holds, our passion for progress will never fade.
The University of Sioux Falls campus got a little more crowded recently as the school played host to the 3rd annual Talent Draft Day, organized by the Sioux Falls Development Foundation.
We had a great day at the University of Sioux Falls with 11 different types of experiences that we offered throughout the day, but really focusing in on what would it be like for those high school students to be on that campus? What would it be like for all of the talented college students throughout really the nation that logged on? What would it be like to work here in Sioux Falls?
The morning focused on middle and high school students from 16 schools. A kickoff from Mayor Paul Tenhagen and a high-energy, immersive start to the day.
We brought about 78 students here today to just explore the different career pathways that are available on USF's campus. I'm looking to be an illustrator when I'm older, and that's why I'm exploring all the visual arts they have to offer here today.
So what did you think about the program?
I thought it was very interactive and very fun. It kept students engaged, and they did a great job explaining things in depth.
They compared it to a college visit on steroids.
It was very much an interactive presentation for learners where they could experience what those classes are look like and get a first-hand account of what it's like to sit in the classroom here at USF, and that's a very unique and special experience. Sometimes I think learners think that maybe a 4-year institution or a 2-year institution isn't for me, but this opens the doors to pathways that maybe kids didn't think they would want to.
I'm just very honored that our campus was able to do this. We consider Sioux Falls obviously to be our home. It's our namesake, and we believe very strongly that we need to positively contribute to the very community that supports our existence, the community and region.
Some high schoolers stayed for the afternoon when they were joined by USF students who took on a speed networking session with area employers.
For college students, it's a little bit different than for high school students. For high school students, it's all about the social skills, the soft skills that they're practicing. For the college students, it's all about making that connection to an employer, getting that internship.
There's a lot of different jobs in Sioux Falls and a lot of different varieties, so getting here to mingle and talk to other people and network just gives me an opportunity to talk with them, see what they're about, and other jobs that they have open and careers that I could potentially be in.
I think what it does is it brings their education to life, because, the theoretical constructs that happen in the classroom are necessary for building your knowledge, but finding your skill sets and dispositional attributes that go into the workplace, the best way you can do that is to have good conversations with people in the field. And so that's the real benefit, that experiential learning component for our students.
So we know that the development of employability skills or soft skills are really important, and just being able to have those conversations and open doors with those employers is a big leg up for our kids, and we're really excited to be here.
And what you don't see on campus is the huge participation in Talent Draft Day nationwide. Students representing 252 colleges logged on for a virtual interactive panel discussion.
For them, we followed up on what's it like to get an internship with one of our employers? What's the right way to apply? What's the advice that you have for somebody when they are applying? What's the proper follow-up?
And speaking of follow-up, that's what the Development Foundation will be doing with the nearly 2,800 students reached during Talent Draft Day.
So the goal coming out for colleges when we have this great of a participation across such a large spectrum of really disciplines that we need to have here. We want to see these kids in internships with our employers this coming summer. And so we've already identified close to 5,000 students that have an interest in working in the Midwest. Our goal is to bring them here and get them tied into an employer. That's our next step.
Ooh, there we are. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us for the final session for today. Hopefully we've saved the best for last. So thanks for joining us here on site and for those of you that are logging in online and watching along as well. So just a little bit of housekeeping before we kick things off here, if I can learn how to use my clicker. So this presentation will be recorded and can be found online later on the website. So this presentation is a moderated Q&A. I am your moderator, and I will be asking some really challenging questions for these brilliant women over there. And if you have any questions online, please text those to Denise Gazzetta at the number on the screen, and that will be up on another slide for you later. But she is handling all the questions from those of you watching from afar. So to kick this off, I know you guys have been learning a lot about attraction, retention, what we need to do as businesses to really retain our best and brightest. But we really, what we haven't addressed today is sometimes we don't quit our jobs, we quit our managers. And so sometimes it's those internal things that really make us choose to move on. And this little tidbit of facts here, the SHRM published a survey that said we're spending an estimated 60% of time dealing with employee disputes. So that can be caused by generational disputes and different viewpoints on how we should work in those workplaces, and all sorts of different elements that make up our culture at our workplaces. So we're going to dig into these topics and give you some practical tools that you can take back to your place of employment. And to join me talking about this topic today, I have some great, brilliant women over here that it should be entertaining, to say the least, because everything they say is, to me, excellent. So if you guys would just take a moment to introduce yourself and maybe your background and why you're on the panel today.
All right, my name is Melanie Wiegert, and I have been in human resources for about 20 years. I'm one of those folks who decided that they were going to college, wanted to get a business degree. I knew I didn't want to be an accountant. I wasn't good enough to be in marketing, and I wanted to solve complex business problems. And, you know, in my 18-year-old mind, I guess at the time, I thought there's no more complex problems than people. And I don't know how I picked that or how I came up with that then, but that certainly has been the truth. So I have had the opportunity to work in mostly smaller businesses, 200 employees or less, but have been exposed to really large company opportunities. In some cases, these organizations were purchased by billion-dollar companies or bought and sold, and I had to run a design center in California for a while, and what did I know about that, right? So I was really very, very fortunate, and that was the first decade. And then the second decade, I've used that knowledge in smaller businesses who maybe hadn't had a full-time HR professional, maybe were transitioning or had someone internally that they wanted to upskill. And so I've been able to do that the last 10 years or so. I still believe that the most complex problems are people problems, so we're all looking for that next best solution that we can really apply in our own workplaces. So hopefully today we'll at least give you a couple of nuggets that you can take back with you. That's our goal, and yes.
Rana DeBoer. I echo what Melanie states in terms of people, right? It's all about people. So my career, which I'm not going to tell you how long because that's going to date me, but has been in people, culture, strategy, and human performance. So started out in kind of this athletic performance-centered, moved into a Vera McKinnon hospital, really introduced me to this idea of corporate health and what it means to be a corporate athlete, which grew into a role for about 15 years in serving at the city of Sioux Falls that grew into career well-being. And what does this world of work have to do with the quality of life that you lead as a human being, right? And how work influences and interplays with our personal life and vice versa. And so really working on what are those conditions that we can create in the work environment that not only allows your business to flourish and grow and accelerate, but also people, right? Because it's the power of your people that make your business run, that make that engine go. They're the spark plugs to your strategy. Was fortunate enough to serve for a couple years in the role of Chief Culture Officer and really dug into what does that culture piece mean, and recently transitioned into a new position as Chief Impact Officer with Keystone Group International, where we'll be going out and helping businesses do that people, culture, and strategy. So I love people. They are messy though, aren't we? We're messy. So let's go, Carla, let's go.
Excellent. My name is Carla Santee. I'm CEO and founder of Blend Interactive. We're a web design and development firm that I founded back in 2005. So I am not an HR professional per se, but I started the business as a 3-person firm and have grown it into the 20s, which means as a small business, we're not big enough to have our own HR professional, therefore I am one. So unfortunately, or fortunately, I also get to impact the culture and hiring and interpersonal relationships at our company as a small business owner. So I am fascinated by those who love HR, and it's definitely a talent, and I really admire those who can really fully understand people. So I hope we can gain that some of that info from you today. So this chart is a bit overwhelming. However, these are the different generations that exist within our workplaces today. So looking at the company that I run, it's a digital firm. I'm the oldest person there. I will tell you I'm 45 years old. So if you look at this chart, we have 3 of the 5 categories at our firm. And although there's a 20-year difference between myself and the youngest employee, our values and our beliefs really do differ quite a bit. Even though I might seem like a young professional, there are some cultural differences that I need to be aware of from those employees that I hire right out of school and what they're looking for in their employment. So I think when we look at a table like this, instead of looking at the differences between each generation, it's smart to look at the similarities and really learn, how can we learn from each other? Much like DISC assessments, once you know how someone thinks and how someone approaches problems, if you understand that, I think we have more empathy for them. So Melanie, I know you had a great comment about kind of the similarities in this chart.
When we were prepping for this session, there were a couple things on this particular chart that stood out to me. First is the very top line where we say millennials fast, and then we say Gen Z accurate and fast. And I'm a behavioral-based interviewer typically, where you come up with a situation from your workplace and you say, how have you done that, or something like that. But there are times where my question is, okay, it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon, has to be done by 5, and you have 4 hours of work to do. How you get it done, right? You can definitely see how then fast and accurate conflict with each other. And that's one of the things that we see with Gen Z. This is a group that's known to be team leaders versus our millennials. They were about team. They were about being one of many, part of the community. Also can create some conflicts there. On the flip side, as Carla said, this Generation Z, what we believe to be true about them, they have components from all of the generations before them. They are more traditional, maybe like we see in that silent generation. They're politically charged, like the boomers. I think we can all think of examples of that, especially over the last 18 months or so. They like autonomy. As a fellow Xer here on the panel, it's weird, Xers are the smallest generation. We were never the majority in anything, and you got 3 of them up here on the panel, so I don't know really what that means. You know, another thing about this new generation for us is they are concerned about work-life, and I'm using the word integration instead of work-life balance intentionally, right? Balance is what it is. These are integrated. How do we think about that little computer that you have in your pocket that you follow around with you all the time? And I think about, you know, labor law compliance and what are they doing and checking their emails and clocking in and out. Okay, it's integrated. We got to figure it out. They're not really into gender identity politics. So at its core, to me, this is the finding our similarities and working together that is innate into that youngest generation. So more to come.
Can I add to that, Carla?
Certainly.
Yeah. So I think another great thing to add on to Melanie's thoughts here too are when we really think about equity and inclusion and we think about generations and high-performing teams and that statistic of conflict, right, that we also want to be sure that we don't bucket people into a category and label them in a certain way. So let me give you an example that goes back just a little bit ago, just a few months ago at the City of Sioux Falls, and working with a baby boomer who was actually the go-to person for technology, not me, right? And so we don't want to label or make those assumptions, and we want to keep that mindset of abundance and of potential, regardless of maybe what the tendencies or the labels might say. So I think that's an important thing when we think about high-performing, high-functioning teams, that we truly see each bucket equally and openly.
Absolutely. So the title of our talk today is 4 tools to attract and retain high-functioning teams. So we've identified 4 things we'd really like to encompass today, including emotional intelligence, purpose and strategy, relationships, and communication. So we're gonna ask some questions and weave all of these things together a little bit. And as we talk about some of these topics, if you have questions, you don't need to wait for the end. Just go ahead and raise your hand, and we have a mic here in the room if you want to participate. So let's start at the top. Empathy, emotional intelligence. So I've noticed that, and I've read that, you know, employees today really want to feel valued and feel heard, maybe a little bit different than what we would have expected a few years ago. So how can we use both empathy and authority when leading your teams?
She's like, you go first. I think you have to have both to be a good leader and to help people really find their greatest and their best potential, right? We have to reach people on a human level, see them as a whole person, respect all that they bring to the table. And the authority piece, I think, is kind of that balance between coach and boss, right? Like, we're wearing those 2 hats all day, and probably we take them on and off in every conversation that we have with our people. So that authority piece, or that more boss-like piece, if you will, that gives people that great direction, right? Because think about they want to know, what do you need from me, and what direction do I need to go? And the empathy piece allows us to be able to deliver that message in a caring but firm way, which is very honoring and respectful of those around us. And when you think about the world today too, man, we need some empathy. All of our people are seeing, feeling, and going through a lot of stuff, right? There's all of this stuff happening in the world that's bombarding us. We all have personal things, and then you add work into it. It's a new feel of heavy, isn't it? Everyone feels this new heavy, and we're not used to having to go through this much strain, this much change, this much heaviness for such a long period of time. So that empathy piece, I think, is really a vehicle that allows you to use that authority or direction and leadership in a really powerful way.
When I think of the word empathy, what I think about from a workplace standpoint is we have to create circumstances where employees feel heard. And that isn't something that there is, a magic universal pill for, right? That looks different in your organizations. That might be pulse surveys. That might be one-on-ones. That might be roundtables with your CEO. It might be all those things plus more, right? But to me, that's the first empathy piece is creating those circumstances for folks to be heard. Authority, and I agree, these have to go hand in hand. My view as an HR professional is I've really simplified my role down to two things, and if I can nail these, nobody is better than my organization. I need to strengthen relationships between managers and their supervisors, and I need to help employees improve their financial wellness. Okay, don't get me on my financial wellness soapbox. That's another conference for another day. But if I had to pick two things, those were the two things, right? So managers and strengthening with their employees. Okay, that goes back to number one, which is creating the circumstances for employees to be heard. It does not mean that you are implementing every suggestion from the box. It means that when they have an idea, they at least, this open door policy is a real thing. And if I had one thing that I would go back and do differently in regard to this, because there's a lot of one things, but many of us are believers of promoters from within, right? Like that's just organically how your company grows. You like the institutional knowledge or whatever it may be. I would have a 2-week hiatus between when the person goes from employee to supervisor. Friday to Monday is not enough time. And whether that is a 2-week sabbatical or 2 weeks that they're home watching Price is Right, or I don't know, 2 weeks maybe where you send them on a leadership training, so then they come back. But if your business thinks it's too expensive or where you can't afford for them to be gone, and those are real issues, right? Like somebody has to pay for that. But I know what turnover is costing all of our businesses, and I believe that this is a way to mitigate it a little bit, because if you can retain 2 or 3 more employees for 1 or 2 more months, that's also real money to your bottom line. That would be my trade-off there. So maybe it doesn't work for everybody, but I would go back and redo that about 55 times. So,
you know what I love about that, Melanie, is that let's say you did that 2-week hiatus. Emotional intelligence and empathy is a muscle, right? You can grow it. And in that time, you're giving that leader the space to be able to say, what does empathy mean in my leadership now? And how am I going to grow that? And how am I going to practice that? And how am I going to put that into motion? Because relationships are everything. Love that comment. Love that.
So moving on to the next tool, purpose and strategy. I was reminded of coffee that I had with a friend this past week, and she's not 100% happy in her job. She went to tell her parents, what should I do? Do you have advice for me? And she has a job in digital marketing. It's pretty cushy. You can work whenever you want, wherever you want, flexibility galore. To her parents, her father replied, like, why in the world are you complaining? I worked in a factory for years and years and years, because he was going for the pension, and it was just a much different generation and a different attitude towards work. And I noticed the disparity there, where she was truly unhappy, but unhappiness seemed to be okay with that older generation, it seems. So when we're looking at purpose and strategy, do you feel that the younger generation is more focused on the direction of their careers instead of longevity? Sorry, that was a hard word at the end of the day. Longevity.
My thought in that is we need to accept that folks aren't staying at jobs for 20 to 25 years anymore. Some of that is also a component of pay, right? You stay at your job, you get a 3% increase. You change jobs, you get a 10% increase. Some of that is just flat out economics, and we as employers have to decide, where's your path in that. I don't know. I heard something last week that I haven't been able to statistically verify this, but if you weren't giving at least a 5.4% increase, your folks were going backwards in pay. I've seen what the averages are. It's not 5.4%, right? But we all know things are costing more everywhere, right? So it's interesting for me when I think about that, and the idea that is the work meaningful? What is the thing that is driving that person to stay, be satisfied? Autonomy, mastery, purpose. Those three things they're a core and they're a constant for a reason. But sometimes when you get shifted a little bit off your purpose, it's easy to see that the grass is greener somewhere else. And it just goes back to if you've got a strong relationship with your manager, you're staying on your purpose. You're being reinforced that your work is meaningful and you want to stay where you are.
So yeah, I think it's the evolution of work, right? It's the evolution. What will this be 20, 30, 50 years from now will be a fascinating story, which many of us probably won't see, right, at the end. But there's a movement in the world. There's a movement for people that want more. We want a more fulfilling life, and we understand that there's a difference between a job and a career and a calling, right? And so my mom and dad would say to me, I want you to go find a vocation. Do you feel me on that? I want you to go find a vocation. I want you to find work, because if you are working full time, you are spending more time in the workplace with a work family, quote or unquote, however you see it, and you do it in your organization, than you are with your own family. And so, yeah, they are looking for more than just some of those benefits. And so it's about the purpose piece at a deeper level than I think we've ever seen. And so the last 18 months, year and a half, has definitely had a bit of an awakening for many people in terms of, what am I doing with my time? And what is this impact that I'm going to make on the world? And so then that job becomes that vocation piece about, what is the legacy I'm leaving? How am I making a difference in this world? And who is the organization that I want to be a partner with and a part of that is equally looking at the world somewhat in that lens? Now, that's not everyone, right? That's not everyone, but there is certainly a significant movement of that in the very professional careers.
I think with the younger generation, too, I think it's easy to say, yeah, we provide meaningful work, but we're pretty lucky if we have found our purpose, in those first decades of your career and your employment. And I've noticed, especially with my younger team, they need constant feedback and reassurance that they're doing a good job. And as a leader, how do we also instill in them that you are doing meaningful work? The time that you're spending at this company is impacting many. I mean, that's a leadership thing you almost need to sell to them, too. Do you think that's true?
Marketing is HR's best friend.
Yes.
And that's partially why, right? Because it is easy to get drowned in the noise, and think about that. I read a study last week, and the sample size was small. It was an international study, and they said workers under 35, and this is pandemic related, out of all the generations, miss being around their coworkers, but they believe they're most productive with flexible work. And in my mind, the first thing, I'm like, those things are in conflict. How can both those things be true? But it's sort of the wanting the best of both worlds. And I said this to, I think I said this to Marcella before. Yes, I want people to come out of school, whether that's high school or tech school or college, and think you're 25 and bulletproof, and you're going to be a millionaire, and we're all going to travel the world, and we all are going to backpack. Like, who hasn't had that sense of just taking the world on fire, right? Somewhere along the journey, then reality sets in. But how sad would it be if they came to the workforce without that and were just willing to accept the status quo? So in some ways, I feel like this is kind of the mindset change that has to happen a little bit of, these same folks who, I'm not a parent, full disclosure, but, I know coworkers, I know my family, I know whomever is in your circle, checking in with folks more regularly, just saying, how you doing? How's it going? I mean, I too am 45 years old. My aunt started texting me like a year and a half ago every day, just like a good morning, hearts and flowers or whatever. I freaking love it. And I'm not a hearts and flower kind of person. I look forward to that text, and I'm so sad when she doesn't text me every day. I can read it to you today. It's like I'm going to my grandson's soccer game, but it feels good when you get it.
That's incredibly sweet. I'm really jealous. Can I have your aunt too?
Yes. She's pretty awesome. Everybody needs a good job. Everybody, you know, regardless of where you are in your career, everyone needs to know you're on target and you're doing good work, and you're matching the mission here, and that the work you're doing is purposeful. And so I'm going to throw in another angle to this that completely complements each of you, and that is to your point about they come in and we've invited them to have a voice in a way that workers haven't had before. So we need to honor that voice, and from that leader as coach, leader as boss kind of standpoint, there's a mentor hat that we throw in there too. And that's the philosophy in our leadership that we want to take with our people. That's a philosophy in our leadership that we want to have be a regular practice in them. And so more consistent feedback just in general with the attaboy and a good job is monumental, regardless of whether you're a long-term employee, a mid-career, or even earlier in the career. But we all also know that the earlier you are in your career, you need a little more feedback, and you need a little more mentoring. And what a great honor we have as leaders to be able to say, I see something in you, and let me help you think through, what is your purpose? You're meeting this where we are right now, and oh my gosh, this is a pathway or a way that you could go and grow in helping them find their own journey and their own path and their own strength. So yeah, there's another perspective to that, perhaps.
I'm practically speaking, just something that Rana said jogged my memory a little bit. At one of my roles, the president of the company said, I want you to be like a college admissions rep. And I think today this is kind of interesting, right? Because we've got a lot of folks from education as well as, general industry, as well as, the public sector. But what he meant was, if you don't have someone in your organization who is committed to onboarding that person, when it is everybody's job, it's nobody's job, right? Like, who cleans off the table at your house? If you don't assign the task, I'm guessing it's you. Like, that's the way it happens in the world too. So that for me, just again, making that a really practical thing when you think about bringing in new folks to the organization. Not every company has an opportunity to dedicate a full-time trainer. Might not be a full-time job. But if it isn't a quarter of someone's job, or there isn't a name associated with that role in the box, I think it's a missed opportunity, and again, is something that you can change that can impact your retention in a positive way.
I know in our company, even though we're 20 people, like, again, we don't have a full onboarding plan with an HR professional. However, what we have done is assigned everybody a buddy. So you have an onboarding buddy. I think when you're a new employee, there's so much to learn, so many oddball questions to ask that you might feel are stupid in some way. But to know that you've been assigned a person, and it's a leadership role for that person to be a mentor and to be there available for that person at any time. That's worked really, really well for us because they have their person, and they both have mutual understanding that you're going to get some oddball questions all day. But it feels good to be the person to help onboard that person, and it's just a relationship that is built from day one with someone that you're comfortable talking to. So tidbit of advice there. So you guys mentioned two things, mentoring, which we've kind of talked about a little bit, but Melanie, I think it was you that talked about Gen Xers missing being around people at work. And I know in our firm, we did fun things like Super Tuesday and Thirsty Thursday, or, had drinks on the rooftop and things that aren't happening today. But how when we move to relationships and the importance of those things, how can we ensure that those relationships are being introduced when we may not be in the same location or, miles apart? Do you have any advice?
Well, so the company that I work for now, I joined them a couple of years ago, and one of the reasons I chose this organization was they are primarily remote. And I wanted to see what was it like to build these relationships, to build the connection, to build the community when I was accustomed to either physically being in the same space or within a day being able to drive and get, person to person, eyes to eyes. I was suspicious, I am not gonna lie. Got there, and again, this company was doing things like using Zoom and using Slack pre-pandemic, and very much incorporated to the communication, that buddy. Like, you're never gonna go to lunch at my company with your buddy, but you've already got this group that you are with right away. You've got your new hire training class, and it feels very much like this was not intentional, but that college, that freshman day where you go and those silly games where you lay on each other's stomachs and make a figure eight, all those dumb things that you're all laughing because you remember. It was like silly, right? But you remember you met this person who then you saw in the lunchroom, right? So we do some of that, but in a digital way. And after those 30 days, then they go onto their team and they sort of repeat that with that same group of people. It is about, transforming this diverse group into a cohesive and effective team. And the more invested folks are, the more difficult it is to pull back. And I bet each one of us can think of an example of our own, you don't change car insurance or whatever it is, right? Like, you're invested in this thing, you want to see it to the end, you want to give it a little bit more time, you give it another chance. That didn't just happen. That was a mutual effort by both sides, or it was an intentional, purposeful design with these corny games that you played that made you feel part of this new group.
That's really good. I would just share a little bit of experience that while I was with the city of Sioux Falls during the pandemic that I think we really found great success with. And that was, it goes along with the communication piece, which is next, but these are all interrelated in many different ways. But it was the consistent communication from leadership that I think made all the difference in the world. Yeah, I see many of you shaking your head, like without question. But here's some of the components to that communication that I think were differentiators in terms of being successful. So at the end of each week, leaders would have a summary email to their team, right? At the beginning of each week, it was a message from Mayor Paul that had, this is where we are, this is what's happening, this is where we're going, these are the events that we're going to predict for the week. And there was always a rally cry in that message, right? There was always a message that anchored us back to our purpose and our strategy and our values, that kept that hope alive and that bit of care and compassion, along with the strategy and, let me just say the word, focus. Like so that's really what those communications did, was they helped people feel anchored, humanly anchored to their leader, and also with this, I feel like I'm in the know, even though we're going 1,000 different directions and we may not all be in the same place together. But that summary email at the end from that immediate supervisor that shared some stories and just sound bites about what happened through the week reinforced that message from Mayor Paul at the beginning of the week, and also spoke deliberately to what was happening within that specific team unit. That was really helpful. People just felt connected, and as though they were still part of it, and they would see their name and a little story about them, or a little success, or a high five. And those little moments made a big difference.
Right. Regarding communication, while growing a small business, I think when you're 5, 10 people, it's all hands on deck. And even though you might be the leader or the CEO, you're shoulder to shoulder, getting through the trenches, just trying to make ends meet and build something. But then things change. You get through that stage and you grow. Maybe you have hundreds of employees now, And the connection that you had kind of going through the trenches with your team isn't there anymore. So that's something that even as a 20-person team, especially going remote, I lost. And I didn't have a reason to talk to people on my team. So I had to invent them. So when we're in an office and someone's in the kitchen grabbing something to drink, I know I'm not interrupting them. I'm not interrupting their busy day to ask how their weekend was or some meaningless thing that allows me the opportunity to speak casually to them without any purpose whatsoever. However, when you work from home or you're not on project work for people, I really had to come up with a way to connect with people. Because when you say, hey, do you have a second to join me on a Zoom call? People kind of freak out. They're like, why? What did I do wrong? You know, their mind goes to the wrong place. And
Imagine when the HR person does it.
yeah, right. Exactly. Well, you know, it's just like, well, I just wanted to talk about your dog. You know, it just doesn't feel natural. So I introduced like 30-minute time slots. So I'm Carla with a K. I called it 30K. So it's 30 minutes with Carla with a K. But really a 30,000 feet of how's it going? Really, I'm not going to ask you about your job. I just want to touch base with you because I don't get to talk to you anymore. And now that we have a hybrid company, some people are remote, some people are in the office, I still do these because I think it's one way that it's just natural now that like, hey, I get to talk, like not work for 30 minutes and talk about random things, which would have happened had we been shoulder to shoulder in the office. So I know that's been a tool that's worked for a company of our size. But maybe you guys do you have any advice or tips on tools and how to use those tools to really communicate in a human way, in a personal way with your team?
You know, like you said, Carla, you kept that 30K going. So those leaders at the city, you know, really saw that value of that weekend, the end of the week summary. And so many of them have, and wow, just keep it going. Yeah. Some other things from a technology standpoint that I've seen folks do are, particularly when you're remote and or hybrid, are having some anchor points, whether it's a SharePoint or whatever that looks like in your organization, but a place for people to share photos of life. And this is my pet. This is my new baby. This is my certificate of achievement. This is our team out kicking butt in some way, shape, form, or fashion, right? Some celebratory thing. There's a lot of human connection that can be done visually through pictures. And pictures are it's almost like you're with someone, right? That's why we love Facebook. That's why we love Instagram. Those pictures and images of humans and the bright colors and the meaning and the emotional expression. So I've seen teams continue with some of those types of things from a remote standpoint, but sort of like a show and tell. And what an easy way to use technology. Snap a pic. Yeah, that's one thing. That's one quick thing I know. That's easy.
You know, you mentioned the FaceTime portion of that, and just being more specific about that. Last week I heard a story about someone was saying, oh, and this HR person, you know, finally gave in to video. It's been 18 months. What do you mean you finally gave up? Like, I was embarrassed for my profession when I heard that. Like, you don't understand anything. Turn on your camera, have some FaceTime with people. The power of video, like think of how expensive it is to have a company meeting, to trudge everybody to wherever this thing is. It's just as powerful when you have a 4-minute message from the mayor, from your leader of the organization. This again is about your team. This is about retention. And if you don't have time for this, what in the world are you doing? Be prepared to run the company by yourself, because people aren't, they're not invested in you if you're not invested in them. One of the other things I would circle back to, so this organization that I work for, you know, being remote, we work from home. We're not remote. We're in the medical field, so you don't get to just, you know, drive your RV across the country. You have to have a work from home kind of a situation. But back to that person that I said was dedicated to onboarding, right? So maybe you don't have a full-time trainer, but maybe 25% of their job is not only those new people, but is thinking of these crazy days 2 or 3 times a month where you share your pet. You don't have a pet? Decorate a rock, and you get to share your pet rock, right? Last Friday, we wore lavender for cancer awareness. In 4th of July, celebrate the hero in your life and tell us the story. Whatever those it's why marketing is my best friend, right? Like, and encourage that participation. Then maybe when you have your 30K conversation, wow, I didn't know you were so into mango farming. That actually was a conversation I had at work. Never thought that sentence would come out of my mouth. Never thought I'd know a mango person who had a mango tree in their backyard, but most of my coworkers are in Florida. It was kind of cool. But you don't know if you don't see. And it's really easy now for everyone to share a picture. And why did Facebook grow? Not because of young people, but because grandparents wanted to see pictures of their grandkids. So use these tools to your advantage to help build those connections. It feels more organic, it feels more natural, it feels more modern, but it's just a bulletin board like we all used to see in the lunchroom.
Here's a good tip. If you want to avoid conflict at work, don't ask people if they like candy corn or if they don't. So true. Yes. So, no, honestly, it's fun. Ask stuff like that because it brings out the best in people. And we do a little water cooler question every Wednesday. That's kind of like that, like candy corn or not. This is controversial. I don't know if you know that. How many of you actually like candy corn in here? You are all brilliant. Oh, no, sorry. Okay, there's a couple people that think it's okay. But honestly, actually introducing some hot topics that are not hot at all is actually a fun way to get together as a team and communicate and like laugh about silly things. So I know that's been really fun for our company.
Yeah. We're talking about building community. Whatever it means the most, you need to find ways that you build community. And it's these sometimes silly happenstance ways that you invite people to bump into each other, virtually, not virtually, and share perspectives and share laughs. That's building community.
So one of you had mentioned mentoring. So can you give an example of a positive experience with mentoring within your companies?
I'm going to actually talk about reverse mentoring because I am a student and I am not technology savvy. And again, today is a lot about engaging students, right? So this is 5-7 years ago, whatever it is. And one of my roles at that point in time was recruiting diesel technicians. It's like trying to find a truck driver. Like, they don't exist in the world. Funny enough, now my company's mascot is a unicorn, so I guess I've always sort of been chasing the unicorn. So, but anyway, so we were doing a lot of events in schools, in high schools, in whatever the case may be. And we had an intern, and she said, "Well, just use Snapchat." These are just words. I don't know what we're saying. Well, then create a filter. Again, I have no idea what we're talking about now. Like, it seems silly to say this out loud now, right? But she was like, "No, we can build a geofence, and you're going to be in Marshall, Minnesota, and so we're just going to do this special thing, and then we're going to drive people to your booth." And I don't know how any of this works. Don't know, don't care. All I know is this person who was an intern, did this great thing, and I was a benefit of reverse mentoring. So I think sometimes as organizations, we have to be careful that mentoring isn't these wizened veterans who have all this knowledge to impart to the young youth of today. That's a part of it, but it should be reciprocal in my mind. So I'm a huge proponent, and I look for reverse mentoring, even if it's learning new vocabulary words, all of which I forgot today. But I'm gonna try.
The mentoring mindset, that should just be a part of our leadership development. It's like a core competency for leaders at all levels, that mentoring mindset, because that means you're open, you're curious, you're ready to learn from whomever and however, whomever comes in your way in whatever situation. So Carla, you asked about a specific story. several years ago, Erin from MB Women's Leadership Program, she's now over at Sanford Health, but she asked, would you be interested to step into MB and help us mentor? And my answer was absolutely yes. I'm honored that you would even ask me to be a part of that, but to Melanie's point, and I think anybody who's been in a mentoring relationship, you know that you, as the mentor, probably learn more than the mentee does. And the mentee doesn't understand that until they become a mentor themselves, really. But I would share with you that I've been a mentor in that program for 4 years now, and that has been one of the absolute best moves for me personally and professionally because of that two-way learning that you're talking about. And the other piece that's really beautiful to that I think, in terms of high-performing teams, high-functioning teams, is we have to allow opportunity and even nudge our people to get involved in the community. We must. It broadens the scope and the level of competence and ability to be even more effective in your workplace when there's that connection with the community. Honestly, we all have, as business owners, we have a corporate social responsibility, honestly, has like never before. And so our ability as business owners and business leaders to build that mentoring mindset makes them better parents, makes them better employees, and makes them better community members, right? And so getting our people out into these programs, whatever it might be, or associations, YPN, AGCE, whatever that might be, having them have that opportunity to get involved. But that personally for me really helped me grow in the quality of type of work that I deliver. Yeah.
So the title of our talk today talked about high functioning teams, and I've seen the benefit of allowing some of my team to volunteer their time outside of work hours as well. Actually, it was during work hours, but one of my project managers asked if she could coach girls on the run. So not even relevant to necessarily what we do, but she asked kind of timidly, would it be okay? They actually meet at 3 o'clock. And I'm like, of course it's fine. I think that the things that they gain by leading in that way is self-confidence. You don't know what you don't know until you get out there and put yourself in the situation where someone's looking up to you. And I could see a big difference in self-confidence and leadership bringing that back to work. And so as an employer, I think it's just important that, yes, it sounds like it's an extracurricular activity or volunteering situation that doesn't pertain to work, but it does. It provides them opportunities to grow. And also as an employer, we're trying to retain these people that we love and care for and want them to grow. If you say no, that's a huge red flag for a lot of people. I think we have to care about our employees inside our offices and their personal lives as well, and grow them both professionally and personally.
I think the other key point I would make about that is, and I don't say this to manipulate or be negative, but this is where the HR and marketing marries each other. Right now, the word flexibility is the word that makes us all cringe, right? But that was an opportunity to offer flexibility at workplace, right? I'm not trying to, again, minimize the importance of volunteerism, but this is an opportunity that you need to reinforce these things so that when that same employee says, well, it was the example before where there was a generational divide with the parents. I would love to offer the flexibility in that in the schedule for you to do that. Like, be intentional with your words, reinforce what you mean, understand what your personal values are and your company values are, and be explicit with that. Because if you just say, yeah, that would be great, that was a good answer, right? But could you market and brand that opportunity or that answer to make it even better, to give them what they want, to let them be heard, so that when they're talking to whomever their cohorts are outside of work, well, yeah, we have this flexibility at work. I don't know what you're talking about versus, they may not connect that in their mind. Don't assume.
So we are coming to a close soon, but I do want to leave time for questions. So does anybody have any questions out in the audience? I know the online viewers have Denise's number. If not, we'll just keep talking because these guys have lots to say. All right, we'll get a mic for you so everybody else can hear as well. Maybe. Please, moment. While we're trying to get the mic to work here, I just thought I'd share a little learning lesson activity that we do at our work. So mentoring comes in many different ways, and it's not just about teaching the skills needed at work. We have a Wednesday morning company meeting. In the last 10 minutes, we leave time for a learning lesson, and people can volunteer to teach anything. And Bob taught us how to properly cut an onion, which was completely fascinating. Apparently, I've been doing it wrong forever. But even as kind of silly and fun that was, it gave him a chance to get up in front of everybody, demonstrate something that, was interesting. And so it's been fun to see what people want us to know, like just little tidbits of, how to read music or random things outside of work that are part of their outside lives that they care about, like cooking or their activities, and share it with the team. So I know some of you work from very large organizations, but even as small teams, maybe if you implemented some sort of learning lesson or sharing, it's a great way to know something else about the team that you work with and gives them a chance to be a leader. All right, are Mike ready to go?
I think so. I don't have a question, just a comment, I guess. I worked at an organization where we did some work with Gallup and learned that if you have a friend at work, you're more likely to stay, you're more likely to feel engaged, you're more likely to be more productive. And so as I hear all of you talking about the different things that you're doing and seeing, and this idea of relationships and purpose and strategy, I think that that's something that is so important for our workplaces today, is to underscore and understand how do we allow our employees to find friends. And for me in higher education, how do I help students find friends at work? Because I think that is key to retention. So I don't know if there's a strategy for helping those people who maybe don't seem to have friends at work, if there's a way to help them find that.
100%, that's true. I mean, my first job out of college, we were this small little digital startup, and not mine, but we were such a tight team that our paychecks bounced, but none of us wanted to quit. Because if somebody left, they're leaving? And then if one person left, the next person would leave. And as an employer, I've seen that too, where the people you need to build your company the first 10 years might not be the people you need the second decade of your business. And so my fear is always, well, if so-and-so leaves, will so-and-so leave too? And then what happens? And what are people going to think? So I think that's something that we experience no matter the size of our business, because those relationships sometimes are the last thread that's keeping somebody where they are. Do you have any professional advice as an HR professional over there, how to prevent this?
Well, in our prep, we talked a little bit about technology, and so I'm just going to piggyback on that. And I should have pulled, I guess, size of business and that sort of thing, but probably most of you have some kind of, I call it HCM, your time clock, your benefit system, your payroll system, whatever. Many of those now have built in, whether they call them community pages or water cooler pages or whatever, and that's often where you can share some of these pictures and videos and whichever. Another feature of those often is creating their own employee resource groups. So the idea of sort of having that employee committee that planned the picnic and planned the holiday party really kind of has seen a sunset, and it has broken off into these smaller communities of, your book club or your environmentalists or whatever, new moms or new parents, whatever it may be. And so if you have some kind of technology tool like that, that's a really quick and easy way to invite people and share common interests. A lot of those systems also have a profile you can write about yourself, which is the About Me. So you can see, the Vikings fans in the room, or whatever it is. So if you have that tool and you haven't leveraged it yet, that might be one way to sort of help like meet like in your workplace.
So great comment, right? You've got a best friend at work. Sometimes, and I bet some of you even in the room would be like, that's my work spouse, like we giggle about. You have people you work with that could finish your sentences and things. So huge fan of Gallup. Completely appreciate Gallup. If you guys haven't read the book 5 Essential Elements of Well-Being, great book, easy read, and it goes into some really essentials of that best friend at work to career well-being. But not only is it about, that best friend at work it's about improving the mental health of your people, right, which gets to the performance of them and their productivity. And that best friend at work can improve those two things as much as 40% in an employee. So I also really appreciate conscious leadership, right? It's one of the things that really attracted me to the new role that I'm in, is the ability to go out and train and talk about what does conscious leadership mean. And as a leader, we know that we have members on our team who are more extroverted and some who are more introverted. And so honoring and knowing what is it that makes my employee tick. And as a conscious leader, you're aware of your employees and their social networks in the workplace. And if you do have that employee who appears to be lacking as a conscious leader, you ask them, right? You ask them that question to find out, because some people really like being Lone Rangers and they're good in that space, as long as that isn't deterring the performance and the productivity of your team and meeting the goals that you need to strategically for your business. So I think that even just that relationship, that conversation that you can have with an employee and asking them, how could I help you find someone if you're looking for someone? Now, there's a whole conversation that has to come before you ask that question, but I think you feel me on that. Yeah, there's another perspective.
Excellent. Well, Rana, Melanie, I believe our time is up. It did go fast, and hopefully you all have gained some sort of tip or tool from this conversation and can take it back to your workplace, or look at something a little bit differently or from a new perspective. So thank you both for sharing your knowledge with this group, and if you guys have questions afterwards, I'm sure they're more than happy to stick around and answer them for you. But
thank you, Carla, for moderating.
Oh, you're so welcome.
And
yes.
Sharing all of your wisdom, too.
Great. Well, thank you again for being here at the Women Workforce Conference, and I believe it is happy hour? Yay! So thanks to everyone. Really appreciate the time with you today.